with the gang. Taking that Zach to the bank. Henny be all in my drink. You niggas is stupid, you think that should change? You not even hot in your gang. Ain't nothing even hot about your gang. You niggas be lying about same. Be posting them pictures of guns for the fame. Niggas just look at me different now. Say that's your man, but he a clown. Don't fuck around with the fuck arounds. Little nigga, you should cut it out. Me and my niggas take different routes. Punch a bitch nigga all in his mouth. Hold up my nigga, we different now. I need a Robert, this is my style. I get a check today, I spent it all tomorrow. I get a bitch today, she probably a foreign model. I get a check today, I spent it all tomorrow. I'm with my gang today, tomorrow never promise.
OG, I draw up the plate, Henny, he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, Henny, he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, Henny, he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, Henny, he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang.
Your attention, please. Please do not smoke in the terminal building. Smoking is only permitted in the specified smoking areas.
Zach. OG, I draw up the plate, Henny, he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, Henny, he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, Henny, he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, Henny, he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate. Niggas don't know what to think. Thought I get money, you change. What you thought we was the same? Still stay away from them clones. Niggas better leave me alone. Talking about niggas is low. Run with niggas who don't know you. Whoa, I made that zagging when city to city. You niggas not hot in your state. If it was money to get a hit Henny, we get it and never complain. Same go for the gang, and we split it up all the same. I can't really eat, let's stay straight, cause we go way back in the day. My day ones from back in the day, they still hang around me today. You wanna come round us, you can't. I'm rolling up loud, it's great. But mama, she bad but complain, cause I'm too in love with my dreams. And I gotta get on the plane, and go get this money with them. I draw up the plate, Henny, he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, Henny, he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, Henny, he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, Henny, he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang.
I get the bag with the gang. Taking that Zach to the bank. Henny be all in my drink. You niggas is stupid, you think that should change? You not even hot in your gang. Ain't nothing even hot about your gang. You niggas be lying about same. Be posting them pictures of guns for the fame. Niggas just look at me different now. Say that's your man, but he a clown. Don't fuck around with the fuck arounds. Little nigga, you should cut it out. Me and my niggas take different routes. Punch a bitch nigga all in his mouth. Hold up my nigga, we different now. I need a Robert, this is my style. I get a check today, I spent it all tomorrow. I get a bitch today, she probably a foreign model. I get a check today, I spent it all tomorrow. I'm with my gang today, tomorrow never promise.
OG, I draw up the plate, Henny, he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, Henny, he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, Henny, he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, Henny, he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang.
Welcome, everybody. All right, we've got a very special edition of Late Night Counter Apologetics here, co-hosted by Niddy and Maya, and we are gonna jump straight into this thing because shit's going on and people are not paying attention to it. Maya, do you want to tell us why we're here?
We're here because me and you have been talking for fucking months about streaming.
I want to make sure it was special. We have to make sure it was right.
Right? And last night I was just like, hey, YouTube threw an old video in my stream and I watched it and we should do this one day. And you're like, how's 24 hours from now?
Oh, did I say that? I'm a bad person.
Pretty sure that's exactly how it went.
Oh, you mean for this one? Yeah, okay, yes. I don't feel bad about that one. All right, nice. But no, all right, so we did a stream about this whole alt-right playbook thing, and it was, I think, one of the better streams we've done, and I felt like it was really influential on my thinking. But at the same time, I feel like it's all been playing out, and I don't feel like people are recognizing the enabling that's going on.
I will say, if you can recognize the enabling that's going on, congrats. You can comfortably call yourself an ally. And if you don't, wake up, you stupid motherfucker.
Yeah, facts. And you also thought it was a good idea to invite Niddy. Do you want to?
Oh, yeah. Is there anybody that doesn't know Niddy?
Most days I don't even know, so...
Why? Okay, so I'm looking at our things, and I'm like center stage.
You are.
Why isn't?
Because you're big time.
Why?
Because this is your idea. This is your moment to shine. This is your.
People know what the fuck I look
like. All right, y'all want to get into this thing, man. Y'all want to roll this fucked up ass tape.
That's what they're here for.
All right. Mm-hmm. Can y'all hear sound? Probably not. Probably not.
Say, for the sake of argument, there's this Calma provocateur, a conservative who makes his living off being a public figure, saying scandalously evil things in public because controversy equals attention, and attention equals brand recognition. He gets his writing gigs and interviews and guest spots, sometimes because people agree with the awful things he says. More often it's because he gets views. His economy runs on engagement, and hate clicks are still clicks. One revenue stream is speaking engagements, the college campus circuit. Fans at, let's say, UC Emeryville invite him as a guest lecturer. But UCE is broadly a progressive campus, which means his presence there would likely provoke a lot of outrage, maybe even a protest. And a protest would be pretty flippin' sweet. Protest means local news coverage, maybe more than local.
All right, so I wanted to pause here, and the reason is because I feel like the easiest way to not see what's happening in your own backyard is to deflect and not see how it ties to what's going on in your community. So if you can see this as something we need to pay attention to, let's say when somebody goes to a liberal college campus, you know, because we kind of recognize that, right? A lot of these apologists, they'll go to the college campus and pick on a bunch of freshmen, asking them stupid-ass questions, and be like, that's super fucked up. But this is the same thing I see happening here when somebody goes into what they believe or we know to be a liberal or progressive-leaning channel, right? Or, you know, a channel where a certain perspective is valued. And, you know, try to do this whole thing where, oh, I'm just here to, you know, well, the thing that I see a lot actually is the person pretends they don't understand the issue, right?
Right.
I don't understand, you know, why this is a problem or where you guys are coming from. I'm just here to get it figured out. And then there's the same thing where a lot of us are anxious, quite frankly, sometimes desperate to keep up the ethos of engaging people with who think differently than we do. A lot of us say that's a big reason we started our channel, is to talk to people who think differently than we do.
Right.
And then, similar to what would happen on a college campus, this is a progressive or left-leaning community, or at least there's vocal members, that are going to be there. And then people use that controversy to stir up views, right? Stephanie would say, asses in seats and eyeballs on screens.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And the issue, too, has to be put on both perspectives. Like, yes, it's a problem to identify the quote-unquote provocateur, but it's also a problem with the university, or in our community, let's say a channel, not recognizing that this is what's happening. Because from a university perspective, I would look at it and say the university's kind of doing something they need to be very careful with, because they risk doing the same thing, right? They risk benefiting from their name being in headlines, from having a popular or controversial event on campus that sells tickets. And if they are not, sort of clear-eyed about what's happening, then they can be guilty too. And I think this happens in our community when we talk about platforming people, where someone's not even necessarily making it clear where they're at on a particular issue. They're just like, oh, great universities host these debates and great channels, let everybody be heard. And yeah, I just see that as part of the problem. Sorry, I know that was long-winded, but I don't want this to become a thing where we see the problem as something that is beyond the dynamics that are happening on our channels.
Yeah, and I think for a campus too, colleges want different perspectives for their students. They want diverse ideas, and which I can appreciate, but I think that right now, I mean, because like when he's talking about this, I'm thinking specifically of like, when Ann Coulter and Milo Yiannopoulos went to was it Berkeley? And I think UCLA. And they were saying, there were a lot of protests, and, it's like, we don't want them here, da, 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 da. And I think it depends on how they got invited. So if there's a, Republicans for Jesus or whatever group that invited, said person to the campus, then I think that they should feel comfortable having their, listening to people who express their views the same way as, any other group would. But I think it's also important for workplaces, colleges, like any entity that has a responsibility to the people who patronize its establishment, to know what's toxic and what's not,
Right.
and to weed out potentially hazardous ideas or communications. I'm in a business, and I wouldn't allow a Klan rally.
That's exactly where I was going to go.
Right.
It's like regardless of what chapters or para organizations are allowed to operate for students as like an opt-in to subscribe to whatever ideology you were exploring in your mid-20s, regardless of what they're allowed to say behind closed doors, it does ultimately come down to the administration allowing access to the buildings and the facilities and the infrastructure to let them have a very public facing event.
Yeah.
So
that's
at the
very
end of the
true.
day, someone at the top has to sign off on these kinds of motherfuckers getting to say whatever they want in front of the public.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and if they don't want to, if the university doesn't want to be responsible, then they need to just say, "Oh, the chapter just did it. We didn't know. Like no one signed off on that." Oh,
Right. Exactly.
which is
Yeah.
bullshit because they're going to have to know, especially if they have to do any kind of security measures.
Well, they
Or
normally have
expect
to.
security measures.
They have to at least get they have to file, for approval for what they're using and reserving the space for.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to say is someone at the top knows. So that's one thing. And then if they do know, I get what you're saying that people, I think, especially who are coming from small communities, insular communities, rural areas, or even suburbia or whatever, they go to college and they see all these people that are different from themselves from all around the world in some places. And they haven't had exposure to those altering ideas or differing viewpoints of the world and new information, right?
Right.
It's one thing to present that information in in the atmosphere the college is for, in an academic setting where it's presented hopefully neutrally, and then it gets to be evaluated in a paper or through a Q&A time with a professor, and they can go into the history of the idea. They can explore the evidence for the claim that they're evaluating. But in a speaking engagement, there is no education. It's rhetoric. It's a fire hose of their facts and the history they want to expose you to for their foundation of what they believe, right? There's no opportunity for the audience to go, now hang on, like sure they can Google on their phones, but they're massively distracted from the
Right.
gish galloping, the people getting outraged, the audience interaction, the next outlandish thing the speaker says. That chance to fact check and engross and take apart the ideas for what they are does not get to happen.
Right.
And it does allow, maybe not as viciously as a Klan rally or a Reich training program being there, but it could get there.
Right.
Absolutely. So one of the things that gets me about this too is that's it's often very manipulative. So one of the things that you'll see a lot of times is it says like, oh, a student group is hosting this. But what you'll find out is that the event or the speaker is sort of on like a tour or they have an agenda. So, for instance, when we've had creationists come to, say, Michigan State when I was in grad school, they were there really because of the center where I worked at. They were there because there were particular celebrated evolutionary biologists there who they wanted to attack. Now, what they did was they sort of manipulated a student group into hosting an event because as a natural propaganda organization, you don't have the right to just come up on campus. So that's what you have to ask. Like, how does, I hate to say it, but like Bumblefuck University, right, or this major university's third campus end up with some a speaker with national profile at their campus for an event, right? There's usually a why to all of this, and so it's sort of there's some perniciousness that can happen, right? That you have to like check to see, is this something? And universities are not doing this, and this is why I think they're participating in the playbook, right? They're like looking the other way when this type of shit happens, where they should be putting checks and balances, and somebody at the student events office should really be interviewing or having more questionnaires filled out. How did you find the speaker? Why are you requesting this money? All this type of shit. Not to stop them from hosting an event, but to make sure the person is vetted before the event is vetted. The other thing that bothers me is what debate belongs in any space.
Right.
The same way I think MDD is dog shit, because why are we debating flat Earth? Why are we debating the age of the universe? Like, why are we debating things that just have no intellectual merit to the debate? Now, you tie that to a social issue, well, now we have real problems. Because what is the point of inviting a critical race theory speaker to a college campus to, you know what I'm saying, where...
Yeah, pretty much derail everything that your professors are trying to teach.
Right. And the university is going to talk out both sides of their mouth. They're gonna say we're all about the DEI initiatives. They're gonna recruit black kids to come here, like, oh, it's gonna be great, it's gonna be wonderful. And then, what do you mean? Well, what's wrong with having a CRT? We just need to hear both sides. And so to me, like, that wouldn't stand. Like, the same way we protested, really, the idea of a university hosting a creationist event. We would probably protest a critical race theory event. But yeah, I think that's and that is what I think is to an extent happening on YouTube too, right? Mm-hmm. Where it's like, I get that where you want to talk to people who have a different opinion than us, but shouldn't there be parameters as to what issues we're willing to discuss and with who?
Yeah, and I think I was saying this to you yesterday as well, where it's like, I was really disgusted that Tangela stayed in the community as long as he did. And I don't mean to keep like harping on this point,
no,
but
it's a fine example. Yeah,
it's like we were just well aware of the fact that he was toxic. I mean, he would brag about hanging out with Darth Dawkins. And praise and, those fuckers. We knew what his values and views were. And like, I can't tell you, like, the last year that he was in the community, I would watch him have the same conversations, oftentimes with the same people, saying the same shit, like, and they're like debunking the same shit that they debunked in the prior stream. And I'm just like, at what point are you not just platforming him for views? And at some point, like, what is a streamer's responsibility? And I've said this to a lot of people, like, the one thing, and everybody agrees, the one thing that the left and the right all agree on is that you have to be a responsible streamer, and who you platform, whose views you're getting across. Because each of us, I mean, we can't decide on what's toxic and what's not, but we all can agree that you don't platform shit, is toxic unless it comes with like strategic, like, I'm going to debunk you. Like, for instance, Jay, you did a stream on Lance and Tim Pool the other day, where they were
I think we were hanging out and we were just watching that. Yeah.
So Lance is under huge fire for not being properly prepared and letting Tim Pool run roughshod pretty much all over him.
Right.
Like he's getting a lot of shit for that. Like, you don't go over there and make us look bad, but I mean, it's all part of platforming, because Lance made it known, hey, I'm going over here. He knew that people were going to follow him over there. And if you don't have a game plan, then you're really leaving the most vulnerable parts of your audience as sitting ducks for those toxic ideas. And we're on the verge of Gilead. We are in like pre-World War II Germany right now for all marginalized groups. Like, we don't have the rope to give to people like Tim Pool. we need to be like bringing people over like left, right, and sideways. And when I'm like, I've yelled at you like, behind the
Yeah.
scenes, I will yell at you. Like, this is not what we do. We go get them. We don't yell.
Right.
And when I'm done with somebody, I'm done. Like, so when I'm like, Tangelo is a lost cause, cut him loose. Like when I'm at that point, like that person's done. Like I'm convinced, like they're, and not even just that I'm convinced, like, well, I have faith that Tangelo is a bad person. No, he has demonstrated repeatedly that he is not trying at all.
Yes.
And it shouldn't be to a point where they're allowed to do that kind of damage. Like I'm not like this gifted visionary. I'm not a psychic. Anybody should have been able to see that. What he did to Arden, anybody should have been able to see that coming. And we really, like, the entire community owes her an apology. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But it's just like for Tangelo and people who don't deserve to be named, and for a lot of people who apparently I'm what do you call it? What's that right-wing word for calling them out?
The echo chamber shit there.
Canceling. Yeah, I'm canceling and creating an echo chamber. And I'm like, if you're out of my echo chamber, no fucks. Like, fuck off. Like, we don't have the rope to give to you and your ideas. And when you're ready to like have the conversation, I'm really open about there needing to be a pathway to forgiveness, a road to redemption, even for the Tangelos. But you got to show me something. Like, you can't just, a 5-minute apology video and you still have your same views. I'm not impressed.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to roll more tape, but does anybody have any? This has just been such a great conversation. I almost feel bad. I feel like the video's interrupting us. But I know it's going to touch on some more stuff we want to get
you and
to.
Niddy, you want to have the last word before we go back to the video? Or
no, go for it.
All right, let's go.
Hell, the conservative media machine loves taking stories like this and blowing them up to national importance. If he plays his cards right, he could get his words in front of millions of people instead of just the student body of UC Emeryville. Of course, he's gonna take that gig. But the progressive students at UCE are wise to his tricks. They've seen him pull this stunt at other UCs, Stockton, Bakersfield, Vacaville. So they make the decision, we're not gonna protest. We're just gonna let him speak. Let the boy stamp his feet, and in a month, no one will even remember he was here. As the date approaches and the provocateur sees he's not getting the response he wants, he starts hinting things on social media, trying to bait a reaction. Psst. Psst, hey. I'm gonna make jokes about the Holocaust. I'm gonna say Americans treated their slaves well. Nothing. So he ups the ante, makes it personal. I'm gonna put up pre-transition photos of your trans students. I'm gonna out the queer students I've seen on Grindr. I'm gonna name which of your students I think are illegal immigrants. Student body's like, bro, do your worst. Nobody's falling for it. Until one student's like, hold up. He's gonna dox immigrants in front of his audience of white nationalist gun nuts.
Goodness.
And we're just gonna let him? Some of his fans were in Charlottesville, right?
Yes.
What we're seeing here is a game of chicken between one group of white conservative...
Yeah.
A moment of silence for that man and how he got canceled from the group for speaking up. Because he kind of glosses over this, right? It's just like, hey, remember that one person who said, hey, maybe we should address this? And then maybe he was right. And he was never mentioned again.
Yeah, that's and this is a real thing that people have to see happen is, first off, there's a tremendous social anxiety about speaking out. Let's be honest. Most people are petrified of the idea of answering a question in a class they paid for. They read the book last night. They did the fucking homework. They watched the goddamn YouTube on the video. A teacher asked them a question in a class that they paid to take. They know the fucking answer and they are petrified. Why? Because you might be wrong, and in any case, people are going to hear your voice, and God knows, there's just a million list of reasons why people have anxiety about public speaking. So now, add to that the confrontation of calling out someone's bad behavior. Add to that speaking out about something that has institutional weight behind it, right? Being it a group's endorsed it, or the university has sanctioned it, or one of your friends is hosting this person on their channel, right? Like there's a weight, and you have to bear the risk of speaking out against actually what's going on in real time, right? And then for a lot of people who have decided to go along with it for whatever reason, there's also now the discomfort that, oh, somebody isn't just going to let this go. And so there's a real way in which the fastest and easiest way to resolve this tension is to just get rid of the person who speaks out.
Yeah.
And this is where, whistleblowers and other people who try to hold people to account face so much backlash. And we have to recognize that that's kind of ingrained in us. To behave that way, and so it takes a lot to act against that sort of instinct. But yeah, it's really problematic. I also just wanted to speak to, like, without mentioning certain names, but like, this is what I felt with a lot of the things that have happened around even like dog whistling and stuff like in our community, to where if people pay attention to how these things go, there's usually the presentation or somebody says something. And to be honest, most of our community is so like, we talk to or talk about freaking cult people every day who tell us we all deserve to die. So there's a sense in which we do let pretty much anything roll off our shoulders, at least at first. And so when people don't get reactions, they escalate. So, to speak to the whole like avatar situation, right? Like, if I see an image of a particular racist dog whistle, 9 times out of 10, I'm not going to say anything. But what happens is when nobody says anything, the agitator goes, oh, well, let me mix it on up. I'm not getting a response, right? And
I mean, and I don't know. I think it manifests in different ways. It's one thing where like, I don't know, I have a lot of conversations with my kids, and they'll say things like, I don't know, just racist tropes about different groups. And I have to be like, okay, you can't do that. That's racist. And I'll be like, what? No, it's not. I mean, so there are the people that are just like really don't get it. There are the people that are just bigots and they think it's funny shitting on other people. It's like, well, I know it's racist, but it's funny.
Right.
And then there are people like Serb, who are like I swear, like he's just like, he has a dick in one hand, and typing with the other, like just stroking it as he's trading.
Yeah. And then the thing that's fucked up is all of these people pick and choose when to act very reasonable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it shows you that they know what's up, right?
Yeah,
and there's
right.
this game that's being played. And the other thing that pisses me off is how far out of your way you have to go to show people that these things are happening.
Right.
And also how it's scary to me that if you didn't have this, like how many people had to sit down with William Fuckface Freeman before people was like, yeah, I think this dude might be a fucking racist. Like, I should not have to go to
Well,
my agitator's channel and get him to slip up and call me a coon to my face 3 times
three
before
times
I'm like, if I'm like,
and tell you to get back
do
to the bus.
you believe me now? This is racially problematic. Like, but that's that
You know,
extra hoop you have to jump through just to
no,
go
yeah.
back and circle back
And
around and establish
I
what's
want to
going
say
on. Go
that I
ahead, go
was
ahead.
wrong because I was yelling at you and I'm like, leave this Nazi alone. Nothing good can fucking come from it.
Yeah.
Like, I just, why are you doing this to yourself? But I think it was hopeful. I think it was hopeful to me, even, you know, like knowing who he was.
Right.
You got him to come out, and like nobody else would have done that. Everybody else was sitting around like, well, maybe just give him the benefit of the doubt. And in the meantime, I'm just like, where's my list? Like, fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck out of my chat. You know, but what you did, as obnoxious as it was, and as triggering as it was, and as you put yourself out there, really ostracized yourself from a lot of people. And at the end of the day, you got him to do exactly what you wanted him to do, and that was call you a coon 3 times and tell you to go to the back of bus, and admit that he knew the whole time,
Right.
about what the raccoon represented, and you know it's racist history, and you know that he was like lying to everyone that asked him about it. Everybody who blamed you for not giving him the benefit of the doubt, he said live on air in front of them all, oh, I was lying about all that.
But see, the other thing is most people probably won't, if people don't watch this, but that's the thing is there was so much more attention at least in our spaces given to, say, a GER stream or whoever stream versus when they give the game away, they're on their channels.
Right,
So,
right. Because the retraction never gets as much press as the original.
Exactly. And that's the problem I see with a lot of the issues, is sometimes you just want to do something. Like, oh, I just want to sit down with so-and-so. Oh, I'm going to debate this creationist, yada, yada, yada. And somebody will tell you, like, yo, so-and-so is problematic. And then you're like, well, I don't know what's going on, da, 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 da. But you have to have the motivation to like go find out. And the thing I'm realizing out here is that part actually takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
And there's just so much that you get buried in the content. So I'm sympathetic to people who say they don't have the time to go through everything, but you have to have a protocol or something for addressing it. So for me, like my thing is, I probably don't have time for everything. And there's been times where, you know, I've just been like, okay, this is where I'm at with something. This is what I know. This is what I don't know. And you know, this is what I'm willing to do. But what I've learned is you've got to trust your mods. You've got to trust the community. It's okay to say, I'm not aware of what's happening, but then it's like, okay, well then until I have time to go through it, we're going to put this on pause.
Right.
You know,
right.
or we're not going to deal with that person until I figure out what's going on. I think what happens a lot of times is people don't figure out what's going on. Then they do what they want to do anyway, and then they get mad at the people who are trying to tell you. That's the thing you can't do.
Yeah, and we're going to get into that a little bit later in the video, which we're like all of 5 seconds into.
My bad.
But before we get back to that,
Sure.
Crystal said something, and I can't share, but I do want to read it because it's very flattering for you. It's commendable how big Jay's balls are, 100%.
Oh.
But I got to say, but it's also as big as his heart is.
Oh, that's really sweet. That's really
So your
sad.
balls are the same size as your heart. Like, man, no wonder you're always sitting in that chair.
I honestly, you know what I honestly really think it is? It's just it's the discomfort, right? Like we talked about this. Don't let a black content creator catch me and Maya hanging out with Niddy right now. Because the way
Nitty white devil.
no, because the way they see it is we're part of white normative atheist YouTube, which is not very inclusive. And it's
Right.
all about proximity, right? Niddy and
Right.
I are a call or two at most away from Derek and Gnostic Informant and Pine Creek, right? And so for people who feel like that community is not very inclusive, if they see you and I hanging out with all the white atheists and then not calling out racism, not calling out transphobia, you know, when they get with us, it's going to be a whole problem, right? So,
Well, then they haven't spent enough
yeah.
time on my content. I mean, I could go back to the cartoon if that makes it a little better.
No, but I appreciate it, but it's just, I just, you know, I want to say thank you to people, but because I really appreciate that, Crystal, but I also want people to be aware of this because a lot of people do care and they're trying to be allies, right? So the vision is not for Maya and I to have to call shit out because people see the response we get for that. It fucking sucks. The response is for us to be comfortable hanging out with our white friends because if our other black friends happen to be peering into those streams, they be like, yo, y'all hanging out with some radical white people, yo. When shit happens, they be calling that shit out. They don't tolerate none of that shit. And then we and Maya are like, yeah, that's why we just kick back because we know if there's a dog whistler or a troll in chat or somebody says some anti-trans shit, the allies, they just be all on them and me and Maya just be like, popcorn emoji, keep it going. Instead, it's exact flip. We're out there in a dog fight. Everybody else is popping popcorn. It doesn't work that way. And then as good as it is for people to celebrate that, you know, we're calling things out. We're like, really, A, we don't want to be, and two, we honestly feel like we have to. So I just, you know, want to speak to that. All right, let's try to get some footage through. We're not
reactionaries,
we're
and one group of, let's be honest, mostly white liberals, for whom the stakes are who gets paid attention to. The provocateur doesn't have the ammunition nor the optics to attack privileged liberals directly, so he pokes and prods at various social minorities whom privileged liberals are supposed to care about, until he gets a reaction. Going after people of color is a pure Xanatos gambit for his fans. Either they get a protest and a national audience hears their reactionary rhetoric, or there's no protest, and they get to fuck with some immigrants. And because white liberals are largely ignorant to the threat posed to those immigrants, white liberals are not great at assessing the full scope of the danger. Often enough, this remains, to them, an argument about ideas and principles. To them, they are but words. Until someone gets hit by a car or shot, and then it's, who could have predicted? The provocateur's animating force is not hatred of people of color. It's hatred of white liberals, just as white liberals' animating force is less advocacy for people of color than moral victory over conservatives. Neither side acknowledges people of color as...
Yeah. All right, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
I want to disagree.
Go for it.
Too, but...
Niddy, you go. I've been talking so much. I just want to say, we are underestimating the perverse joy the Nazis get out of fucking with immigrants and people of color.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Completely agree there.
Absolutely.
Sorry, no,
but so as even when I was a Christian that tried to shoehorn some conservative ideas into the way that I live my life and interact with people and value things, I now, like, abandoning that ideology and commitments, I still viewed myself and continue to view myself as more progressive and we'll call it liberal, I guess, But when I am talking about issues for people of color or social or sexual or economic minorities, that doesn't come from a place for me to win. And it never has. And so my objection is I don't care about like having a high ground. For me, I'm not trying to blow smoke up my viewers' asses. I really am trying to care for the person that I'm envisioning someone that I've met before or I know exists in my neighborhood or my city that this shit affects. Like, not every liberal is like, I just want to beat the conservative Nazis or like, you know, or what, or the bigots. I got to beat the bigots. Like, no, like some of us are in that fight because we vote, we protest, and we're the person we're doing it for is next to us.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We're not blind. Like some of the liberals are not blind. Some are. Some are exactly this. They're privileged. They can drive all the fuck around the country and protest the bigots all they want. But some of us are just like, no, this is fucked up. Let's do something about it, right? And we're trying, but you have to be patient and know that the kids on campuses with their BMWs and their, you know, scholarships and shit, that like the older white liberals that are protesting, maybe they are like actually doing this because they give a fuck, not because they want to beat some bigot or be right at the end of the day. It might feel like that. It might look like that from media portrayals, but you can't. I almost would say that that's similar to saying all cops are racist, right? Mm-hmm. You just can't do that. It's right. Just like it's an inverse genetic fallacy against the people on the left.
Yeah. I think you're both 100% correct. The only thing I would add is that there's a point that he's making that's really good, which is the problem is thinking that making the mistake that this is about principles and ideas and letting this remain a word game, and that's kind of what we were touching on about debating topics that shouldn't be debated, right? And that's even the issue with when somebody's identity becomes what they call a political football. Like it's that's scary.
Right.
Yeah. All right, let's keep going.
Entities in this fight. They're viewed as tools for getting white people what they want, and their suffering is viewed as an acceptable byproduct. You've maybe heard the phrase, in the game of patriarchy, women are not the opposing team, they are the ball. Well, in the game of imperialist, white supremacist, capitalist patriarchy, minorities are not the opposing team. They are the cars, store windows, and newspaper kiosks that get wrecked when the home team loses, or when the home team wins. It's the Eagles fan view of oppression. And make no mistake, weaponizing or disregarding students of color is still racism.
Boom, there it is.
But it's racism of a kind most white people have trouble recognizing, or to speak with a sharper edge, that white people often refuse to acknowledge. From the white provocateur who does not hate minorities directly, but is willing to utilize the hatred of others to get what he wants from some white people, who says, I will hurt them a lot just to hurt you a little, to the white liberal who does mental gymnastics to not come out and say, that is a black and brown sacrifice I'm willing to make. Racism is not always a passion, but it is tolerable.
Yeah, I mean, it's tantamount to saying, I never said I was an ally.
That's another thing. And this is a really tough thing too, right? Because there's I think you just got to walk and chew gum and understand what people are saying when they say it, and it's really not that hard. There's a level to which people are saying, don't call yourself an ally you know, you have to speak with marginalized people, and so they can let you know whether or not you're being an ally.
Mm-hmm.
However, I'm from the time when it was also important to self-identify as an ally for exactly the reason you're talking about, which is I'm not going to let myself off the hook for being part of the problem and not part of the solution. And also, when that community over there talks about the L, the G, Q, T, I, okay, when they add that A, and they say we're now identifying allies as part of this struggle with us, oh, hell yeah, I'm with them. Okay? And that's where I think it's self-identifying is to say I'm pro-trans, I'm anti-racism, I'm a feminist because that means women are equal. But it is to say I am not going to tell Maya I am an ally in spite of her criticism of how I speak about women. I'm going to say, oh shit, I definitely wasn't being an ally when I said that misogynistic ass thing, and thank you so much for correcting me.
Right. Right.
Right.
No, I mean, and seriously though, like the one thing like that has meant so much to me throughout a lot of the racism and the transphobia that we've been encountering lately is when people come to me and say, hey, if I ever act like that, or if I ever do something stupid like that, will you please tell me? Like, I mean, it means the world to me because like nobody's asking for perfection. No one. And like you see what Stephanie does, and Stephanie's fucking amazing. It's just like, hey,
yes.
the thing you said has the potential to be problematic, and I'd like to maybe explain the nuances and something that you could do differently going forward. And it's not like, hey, you did a bad and that means you're evil. It's we're all human, and it's just impossible to understand the plight of every single American, much less somebody going on, overseas. What allies need from all of us, me included, sometimes, and it's not like, hey, you're gonna be canceled if you misspeak. It's just know that there's things that you're gonna do that's gonna upset people. Not just take that as a given.
Yeah.
When people say, hey, that hurt me, don't say, well, I didn't mean it to hurt you, so you don't have the right to be hurt. Listen to what they're saying. And even regardless of whether you felt you did something wrong or not, just take it with a grain of salt and try to implement it into, your activities going forward. And it could just be that I can't say this thing around this person. Like for instance, I dated a guy who's a former alcoholic. So when I dated this guy, I couldn't drink. And like he told me I could drink, but I'm just like, no, not doing that.
Right.
And I mean, it was a personal choice I made so that, I didn't want to do anything that tempted him.
Sure, right.
I didn't know where he was in his walk, and I didn't want to do anything that would like put him back in that horrible place. And it was a choice I made, yeah. And I'm sure it's not a choice all of his girlfriends made, but sometimes, me drinking wasn't bad. It wasn't wrong. It wasn't illegal. It wasn't unethical. It wasn't immoral.
Right.
But it was something that I wasn't comfortable doing. Allyship is like that too. Even if you don't think you're doing anything wrong, there may be one thing that this person that you don't do around this person. There may be, one thing that you don't do around this group. And again, it doesn't make you a bad person. There's just, it's part of the social contract, there's things that I can't say around kids, and, and we all understand that, and that's fine. But like when it's, trans people, then all of a sudden it's like, well, I'm adult and I should be able to say and do whatever I please. Fuck off.
Yeah.
You can't have trans friends and then also say fucked up shit like, well, I never said I was an ally. It's bullshit. If you're not an ally, then stay the fuck away from people.
Yeah. Also, like, and this is hard for me because it's something I struggle with, but It should not. I don't think it should feel safe. You know, I say this: growing up is part of growing up, and so we're all. The one thing I really do like about comparing this community to university situations is this is a real learning community. We're trying to learn how to deal with these issues in real time. So your growth opportunity, I'm thinking of it like learning racing, right? You could drive safe as you want, but you ain't never gonna win that way, right? You got to drive safe, but on the fucking edge, and that's what the situation with allyship requires. Like, our lives is at stake. So you got to be on that gas pedal. Like, it's fucking go time. So at the same time, you're going to be in the midst of the fire. Like yesterday, I was terrified doing the stream about the Washington Post story about trans people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's a fucking landmine. And so I would not be surprised if there was pushback for the way I approached something with it. I did not know if it was the right thing to do or not to do. I don't know when it's helpful to shine a light on something and when it's helpful to fucking talk about anything else. I'm ultimately myself trying to figure out what doing something about it looks like. But my point is, I'm okay with that fear because it's real time. It isn't something that was worked out 30 years ago and there's a handbook, oh, you just follow these 3 instructions and you're good to go. It's like, bro, this is live shit. You're going to be out here, then you're going to be out here. You know what I'm saying? And some real shit might happen. Like, hey, this is not a drill.
Right.
You know? So I'm just saying that it's okay to feel that, and that has to be part of being okay to be wrong. Another thing is like the Anna Kasparian situation where she failed on that. I did it hard.
I mean, like Twitter's calling her AK Rowling.
Yeah. Well, when I read the first comment, I didn't immediately recognize the problem with it. And I did a stream after people in Gather were able to explain that to me. And the reason I did that is because I wanted a public chance to say, I didn't see this right away. This is a situation where I didn't hear the dog whistle. Right. And people had to explain it to me. The reason I did that is because if I'm trying to do anything, I want to lower the temperature of being wrong. Mm-hmm. I want to say, if y'all know anything about me, y'all know what side I'm on. Okay, but that doesn't give me a pass. Holy fuck, gang, I didn't see this. So the title of that stream was Anna Kasparian fucked this up, and so did I. The difference is when people explained it to me, I was like, holy shit, this is fucked up. We're definitely not letting that side. And you can't even put the terms biological and woman next to each other without me going off on your ass immediately now, because I know what the fuck is up. The difference is, I have 700 subscribers. She's got one of the largest platforms on the left, and she's doubling and tripling down on the mistake. Yeah. That's what's not okay. They needed to lower the temperature of being wrong and say, yo, I stepped in it. I didn't even mean to. Y'all know I didn't mean to, but it's still not okay. And let's just acknowledge this and move on.
And that's really all they wanted. Anna... I have my issues with the Young Turks, and I know like you used to play them and Gather like daily. I mean, and I would watch them because they have like they have done a lot of articles that nobody else was talking about. Like when the whole housing thing was coming, they were talking about that for a good like half year before it became mainstream media. Like with the housing, with like prices going up and due to the pandemic and all that stuff. And they were like, no, this is huge. Like nobody's talking about this, but this is where you can go to see like BlackRock, you know, buying up all these homes and da 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 da. And I'm like, people need to start talking about this. This is insane.
Right.
But I mean, just stuff like that. And people wanted her to just be like, oh, my bad. Sorry. I'll retract. And when she doubled down, I'm like, the fuck is some Jimmy Dore type shit? Are they gonna
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
are they looking now? I don't understand.
Yeah.
It's just it's weird.
Yeah.
It's weird.
And
I'm sorry.
I get sick of it too because I haven't watched her stuff since.
Right.
Because
Same.
I'm at that same place with you. I can't ignore the discomfort of marginalized groups
Right.
and feel okay with that choice. So, you know, I've tried not to completely shut off the network or the other content creators. And if somebody plays something from the Young Turks, I'm like, fine. But I'm trying to show people that's what it's like. It's real time. And if somebody chooses not to consume or support your stuff anymore, it's not us out to get you or cancel you. It's us out to show those people, look, I see a lot of people ignoring your pain. You can count on me not to.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's even like when I've been trying to beat this drum every chance I get. If they get one group, they'll be emboldened and they're not going to back down. I think a lot of people are just like, oh, thank God they're not like focused on me. And I'm like, okay, well, they've been focused enough on the trans community or long enough on the trans community for you to have caught your breath and for you to join us in the fight against them. If they're only focused on one of us, then they're not going to see the rest of us rushing at them. And there's more of us than there are of them, and we need to stand together and push them down. Like what they're doing is not okay. And if they can dwindle us down group by group, it's any one group isn't going to be strong enough to fight. Like, I don't think people understand how much money is being thrown at attacking any one group. Like when they get focused on something, just billions of dollars get funneled into that. We don't have the money to put in that. All we have is our vote and our attention and our tenacity. These are all free things that we need to utilize to get them to back down.
Yep. Well,
I'm sorry. Yeah. Shut up. Niddy has not spoken.
Well, I want to key him up. I'm gonna queue him up because Niddy, you're part of a marginalized group, and I'm so glad you're here. And there's a lot of white men out there. I don't care how much money you got that's not listening. You're part of a marginalized group. They're called atheists. So Niddy, what do you think when you see all this stuff coming? Because you got to be thinking they're not going to talk any nicer about the godless.
No, and you know, I've just deconverted like a year and a half ago, basically. And when I was a Christian, you know, if I get in my mental TARDIS 3 years ago, I was like, what's this Christian nationalism shit? Why do these Christians want so much power? What are they really afraid of? Right? Why do you not want just Jesus to come back and rule you? I don't understand this whole like you need dominion over all these people type thing. And the grab for power, I think, is just so telling that what they really believe. They're like the rest of us. They believe, oh shit, there's probably only one life to live, and you know we got to grab some power here. We got to fight for our little group here, right?
Yeah.
And now, being on the outside, there are a shit ton more Christians around me than atheists. Like, I do my "it's best to be an atheist" sign in public, and I can get Christians of all flavors to eventually come up and say, you know, the Lord loves you. It's like they could be Jehovah's Witness. Like anyone who believes in Abrahamic God is more than happy to tell me, like, oh, you're wrong. Oh, yeah. Da, da, da. And what scares me is that I think even the Christians that are buying into being a single issue voter are not acknowledging the history of this country and the reason we separate church and state, the reason that we try to divorce spiritual beliefs from legislation is to not repeat history. to not be drowning in the blood of each other. Because you get the wrong Christian at the top, there's going to be a lot more dead Christians.
Right.
With the atheists going first, of course.
Right.
But there will be blood. It'll start with, non-gender conforming people. It'll go to the non-Christian people, including atheists, and then it's going to go to the Christians that aren't doing the Christian right.
Right.
The progressive hey, you progressive Christians, you're fucked. Stop it. Yeah, I know you don't like abortion. It makes you feel icky. I know you're not sure about gay marriage. It makes you feel icky. Well, you're fucked too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because your Bible's not literal enough.
All right, let's get through some tape. Let's
Easy to disregard.
Everybody take
in a white
sip of something
supremacist
so
world.
we can let this.
It is the
play
cost
for
of doing
years.
business.
Yeah. You may drink.
Nothing about this is okay. Now, the weaponizing of minority suffering is employed against many minoritized groups. I could be making this video about transphobia or homophobia, and while many details would differ, I wouldn't even have to change my intro. Samuel R. Delaney, take a shot, argues that misogyny is the oldest bigotry, and therefore the model on which all other bigotries are based. I'm focusing on institutional racism as my chief example, first because this is America and the cup runneth over. Second, because in the 2016 election, the greatest indicator a person was going to vote Republican more strongly correlated than being registered as a Republican was racist sentiments. And third, because racism is a fundamental building block of fascism and a primary means of sowing discord on the left. But we'll get to that. I am going to curb my reflex to make every alt-right playbook some kind of definitive statement. I do not have the last word on American racism. If you want to hear about American racism from the people who experience it, here's a book. Here's 5 books. What I bring to the table is, I have at this point several decades experience being white, and in trying to explicate white supremacy, it is sometimes worthwhile to look at it from the inside. So my focus will be, what does whiteness mean to white people? American racial discourse has 4 principal white characters. On the far right end, you've got the guy white people picture when they hear the word racist. Your Klansman, your neo-Nazi, your suit and tie ethno-nationalist. This guy knows he's a racist, and he's proud of it. Next to the white supremacist, you've got the white collaborator. The politician, public figure, or businessman who does not agree with the white supremacist on paper, but will seek out their votes, attention, or money. Next to the collaborator, you've got the white moderate. People who ostensibly believe in racial justice as an end goal and are somewhat committed to bringing it about, but only with the cooperation of the white collaborator. It wouldn't be fair to do it without their consent, you see, and thus the white moderate spends a lot less time opposing
the
collaborators
majority of the Democratic Party,
appealing to their better natures. They tend to operate on behalf of people of color rather than with them.
Boom.
Plainly put, the cost of doing business maneuver is this group using this group to attack this group, using people of color as their weapon of choice. It is white supremacy in the form of 3 groups of white people fighting amongst themselves. Finally, on the far opposite end, you have the honest-to-goodness anti-racist.
Boom.
Where the racist will support white supremacy, the collaborator uphold white supremacy, and the moderate seek to reform white supremacy. Only the anti-racist is trying to get rid of it. And even they are not.
And real quick, I'm just going to say this is the origin of the statement, be anti-racist or get the fuck off the stage. It's all 3. It's that whole portion of the spectrum versus the anti-racist. That's it.
Free from racial bias.
He's not really representing this in like proper proportions. It's not like, hey,
it's not a quarter each.
Like, no.
Yeah.
Like I mean, man, you probably got a good half of them spread equally between the middle 2. And I don't know. I know it sounds low, but I really only think it's like 10 to 15%. Like if you're, like, we're just talking about white people. Like
Yeah.
if you're really honest with, if they're really honest with themselves, they're anti-racist. I think most of them, honestly, are like the MLK white moderates, where
Right.
it's just like, I would prefer it if racism was gone, but only if I don't have to do anything uncomfortable. Or
Yeah.
if nobody does anything that's uncomfortable to me, like protest
Or
in
a
front of a
genuine
parking space
feeling
at
of
light.
without upsetting the order that I'm comfortable with, right? Like that's the
Yeah.
yeah.
If you tell one of them, you are not free from racial bias, it's not guaranteed they will react well. It's just, if you're trying to fight white supremacy, they're the white folks you have the best odds with.
Boom.
Now, this little chorus line is not how white people typically frame the situation. We usually think of racism as a binary. There are racists, and there are non-racists. In that framing, the provocateur is someone whose allegiance we get to debate. He willingly sacrifices people of color, but without personally hating them. Does that count as hashtag racism? This debate lasts approximately the rest of your goddamn life, which should be evidence enough that the frame is wanting.
Yes.
In today's framing, there are several shades of racism, and there is anti-racism.
There it is.
There is no non. Now, before we map the choreography of how these four types interact...
I need to stop there. All right, so, look, there is no non-racism. I need people, even Black people, to hear this. There is no non-racism, especially if you're an American. And God, I know that I think it was in Gerstream where what's his face? I haven't seen him in your in Gather in a while. Not my
Wayne?
one Black friend, but Wayne. Yeah, he was arguing with a bunch of people. Black people can't be racist because it has to be institutionalized. So, and a lot of people don't understand that talking point, and it's a legal talking point that when you're in the movement, like you're fighting for equity for people of color. That's the definition that we put on the table. Because you can't legislate what's in people's hearts.
Right.
And from a practical matter, I say this all the time, and I hate the question, well, do you think that Trump is really racist? Well, he's practically racist, so I don't give a fuck. Like, you can hate me all day long because of my skin color. I don't give a damn. I don't want to go to Thanksgiving dinner with you.
Right.
I want to be able to go to school. I want to be able to get a job. I want to have quality healthcare when I need it. And when I don't. I want my fucking checkups. I want to be able to buy a house. I want it to be appraised at the equal value of Niddy's. Like I want you to not stand in my way. I don't need you to like be a guest at my wedding.
Right.
But like you need to make my wedding cake. Fuck you. I don't care. It does not matter what's in your heart.
Right,
if you are a heart-only racist, I mean, it's honestly, I'm not saying you're an ally, but I mean, it's almost on the super. I mean, it's indistinguishable from one.
Yes.
Like if you're not going to make the jokes, if you're just going to do the legal things, but well, there's a Black person. I've been told they're kind of wild, so I'm not going to get too close. We can live with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like racism is not what's in your heart. It's what you do. However, the reason there's no such thing as a non-racist is because what's in your head, what's in your heart dictates how your actions play out in the world. Like I remember back in 2016, I forget the Ohio governor that was running for president. It's too late to be thinking about shit. I can remember all the details.
Sure.
Yeah, but he had I don't know, opened a door for a woman and they were calling him misogynistic. And I'm like, if I get, yeah, that he has antiquated views of women, but he's not going to try to legislate away abortion, and on occasion he'll open a door. I'll take it. Like, I will fucking take it.
Right.
I get that he doesn't think that women are equal to men, but like, we can deal if he's willing to do the big things. We can talk him through the small things. Like, these are people that we can bring along. It doesn't mean he's not misogynistic. It that's just kind of the level of it lets me know the level of conversation I need to have with him. So everybody's misogynistic, everybody's racist, everybody's, whatever, like all the things that we are socialized to be. And so it doesn't really help to have the conversation. Are you racist? Are you just take it as a given? Yes, they're sexist. Yes, they're racist. Let's talk about what's being done. How is that playing out? Like, these are the things. So when you see things like that, I think a lot of people it's gonna gloss over their head. Like, what do you mean they're all racist? Like, I don't understand that. Like, no, yeah, we all are. Let's just,
Yeah. I see what you mean. Also, anti-racism isn't about hearts and minds. And this is what people sitting on the sidelines don't know. Like, you might think my treatment is unfair, but if you're going to just sit there quietly while someone treats me unfairly, then you telling me later, hey, I thought that was really fucked up. Like, that does nothing for me. And I grew up with a ton of that, right? This is one of the things when I say I was the only black kid in all white school that I'm not identifying as a specific experience. But that is one of them, is that there were so many people who, after the fact or privately or, when it was safe to do so, would tell you that, they thought you were okay and all the racist shit is super fucked up, but they weren't willing to actually put anything on the line, speak up, do anything, or even maybe not invite me and the racist to the same party so that I can actually enjoy myself, because, I don't know, racism isn't my fault. But, it's that's that same vibe.
First, a quick note on how most white people think about whiteness. Short answer, whenever possible, they prefer not to.
Yeah, it's a great video, Wayne.
Whiteness in America. Is it vanilla? No. It's fior di latte. Nothing but milk and sugar. When non-whites are flavors, we are the base. In the same way one does not hear one's own accent. British people have accents.
That's not a lot of pots.
But we just speak English normal-like.
That's not a lot of pots.
If you have not built your whole identity around being white, you probably don't think about your whiteness very often, and perhaps even feel uncomfortable when one points it out. For it is the white experience to passively, unconsciously, conceive of oneself as a kind of raceless default. This is privilege! Indeed, this is part of what makes privilege privilege. It's the identity that's treated as a norm, the one you don't have to think about. A movie with an all-white cast is widely perceived as being in no way about race. But that's not true of one with an all-black cast. Identities being treated as defaults makes institutional racism difficult to understand even for well-meaning white people. How can I be racist if I don't identify as a racist? How could I be part of a group I never opted into? But let us reflect. Would a group one never opted into not describe a minority? People don't choose to be gay, and while people also don't choose to be straight, being straight is normal. People don't come out as straight or have complex codes for signaling heterosexuality. Not that they'll admit to, at least. In lieu of other evidence, straightness is presumed. But if people clock you as gay, or even think they've clocked you as gay, then you stand out from the background. It makes you more visible, where the appearance of straightness makes you less so. Makes you the everyman. Of the many identities one may have at any given time on any given axis, there is typically only one default, whose rules operate differently to the rest. The more of these normal identities one possesses, the more accustomed one is to being the default. The idea is foreign that people might group one not by how one thinks of oneself, but by how one is perceived, and by how one impacts others. It gets hard to fathom that any more than whether or not a light-skinned Mexican gets to be white is up to them, whether or not you fit the definition of racist is not up to you. The
Thank
boundaries
you.
are not policed from the inside.
All right, can we stop right there?
So, okay.
Yeah.
I loved all of that.
Yeah.
I feel like, and I'm so
Yeah.
glad, like, everybody here is, I mean, not that everybody here needed to hear it, but like, I've been saying this so often in the past month, like, a lot of, like, just the not knowing, the unknowing, like, the obliviousness is privilege. And I don't even think, when you're white, I didn't realize growing up how, I don't know, the perspective from a white person, you know, because you always know that you're Black in America, at least. You walk through the world knowing that white people look at you differently, and you understand that white people are centralized in the media. The level of obliviousness that white people have to other Americans just completely escaped me. I remember saying to another streamer, it's just like, what are all these people freaking out about? Like, you know, it's a Black character in a movie. And, you know, they were like, when everything's been centralized around you your whole life, you know, and then all of a sudden something's not, you don't know what to do with it. It's just, there's confusion. And then there's the narrative that's saying this should be turned into rage. So you go with that. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, it's so crazy to me. Like, it's just the thought that you should always be centralized. And anytime that doesn't happen, you have the right to get angry, was just crazy to me. But it makes so much sense of what I've been seeing recently too. I'm sorry, you know what, Niddy, this is a kind of a you moment. What did you think about? Do you agree, disagree with anything that was said in this past clip?
Yeah, I mean, I largely agree. And I'm really grateful that I went to a university that it was a Mennonite university that wanted to talk about these issues and wanted to get us to identify the biases that we come into situations with, the ways in which we don't regularly recognize the disenfranchised or the people considered minorities. I completely agree. And there's so many things now being older where I can go, oh yeah, like I have gotten to where I am in my life largely. I can think of specific situations where I had an altercation with law enforcement or in school, that if I were a person of color or a minority, like my life would be completely different. You know, I'd probably be in jail. Let's be honest. Like, you know, so there's that. And I don't feel like guilty for that, but I do think like I need to own that and let my kids know, like, hey, the situation we're in this country is such that you're going to get things and you might get away with things that you probably shouldn't, that you need to be aware that you might get treated differently than the people you become best friends with at school. And things might be harder for the people that you want to be friends with because they go to an inner city school. And things are going to be harder for people you want to be friends with that aren't going to be as hard for you. And you need to be ready to help them understand them, listen to them, and, you know, and stand up for them when, you know, malactors come their way.
That's great,
Yeah.
Niddy. You need to have everybody needs to have the conversation with their kid about race earlier and privilege and make it make it easy. Sorry, go ahead, Maya.
I gotta put my kids back on, you know, X-Men, Captain Planet, and like the shit where like in the 90s, like there were so many good or decent rather, like, you know, diversity education shows and episodes where it was like a non-issue. It was like socially awesome to be like, yeah, let's accept new ideas. Let's let people marry who they want. Let's let, you know, like that was like the basis for like whole arcs of character arcs in cartoons and young person media. And it wasn't a fucking deal at all. Now it's like, oh, people with different sexual ideas that don't want to feel ostracized. Oh, can't talk about that. Fuck all them. Like, where did you guys grow up? Mm-hmm. Like, I don't understand.
Yeah. No, I was just gonna say, I know, Jay, you were talking the other day about how your mom was like on you about your privilege, and she didn't want that to be lost on you.
Yeah. Just because, you know, there's like this, you know, like if you grow up around if you don't grow up around black people, they're worried that you won't understand the history of slavery and segregation and the civil rights struggle, and it's a lot of weight to put on children. But yeah, and that's what I meant by it's good for everybody to start having the conversation younger. The other thing I was just going to say is he talked about being aware of your privilege, but I also think it's important to take away the point of being aware of your culture. Like, when I want to talk about racism, I talk about racism, but when I say something is part of the white boy problem, that's what I'm talking about, culture, right? Like, if somebody explains their feelings or their experience to you, and you look at them and you say, well, what's your evidence for that? Or, I'm not sure about your epistemology, right? That's a cultural thing. Like, because the way a lot of other people come up, that's not a normal thing to say to somebody. That's not a normal conversation to be having. And so some of these things, what becomes the norm or what's regular, this is what we do around here. Yeah, well, sometimes that's weird to people who this isn't their normal operating mode. So I think that's a lot of what I experience. Myself, Maya, Steph, all these people I know from different groups, you know, we're somehow in this weird world where we're participating in a culture that hasn't really integrated the perspective of people like us. That's we're happy to be here. We just want sometimes for people to be like, to recognize this is its own unique culture, right? And just because it's mostly white dudes doesn't mean that everything that's said or done is normal. It's definitely not. All right, cool.
Going again from right to left, this is where we find the titular alt-right. What's novel about the suit and tie ethno-nationalist is how they break from the iconography of racism. Their goal, like that of many racist people, is to attack and oppress people of color, but in such a way that the white establishment lets them get away with it. The average white person's shorthand for a racist is still primarily the Klansman and the neo-Nazi, respectively a rural working-class white nationalism and an urban working-class white nationalism. The alt-right is the gentrification of white nationalism. Their pocket squares and MBAs and $90 haircuts short out the white moderate's brain because they still associate white supremacy with white trash. Racism is worse than evil. It's common. It's why they insist reactionary conservatism is propped up by the white working class in flyover states, despite all evidence to the contrary.
The alt-right can't be as bad as everyone says, because whoever heard of a racist going to Harvard?
The alt-right bridges the gap between white nationalism and the rest of white culture using class signifiers to gain access to the political and social capital of the more mainstream collaborator, and getting the moderate to treat them not as someone to be ignored, but someone to bargain with in good faith. The collaborator finds value in this relationship because, regardless of one's position on it, racism works. A police officer may not be personally racist, but when it's the end of the month and they need to hand out a few more tickets to make quota, it's safest to do so in a low-income neighborhood where the average driver can't make their life hell by hiring a lawyer. And due to decades of racist redlining, most low-income neighborhoods are disproportionately black and Latine, so... And a prison warden may not be personally racist, but white people are approved by jury selection more often than people who think the justice system itself is racist, so black and Latine people are the easiest to jail, and private prisons get more funding when they're full, so... And a conservative politician may not be personally racist, but black and Latine people predominantly vote Democrat, and since they're disproportionately imprisoned, if the politician denies convicts the right to vote, they're more likely to get reelected, so...
I don't know whether the labor unions and their bosses really hate me. That doesn't matter, but I know I'm not in their unions. I don't know if the real estate lobby is anything against black people, but I know the real estate lobbies keep me in the ghetto. I don't know if the Board of Education hates black people, but I know the textbooks they give my children to read and the schools that we have to go to.
Now, frequently enough, these people are self-identified.
Now, and I think everything that he laid out is perfect because it really illustrates a lot of what I've been saying about, racism. We don't care what's in your heart. It's what you do.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And these are the effects of what you do. So whether or not you would invite me to Thanksgiving dinner, what I need to know is if you would sell me down. Like, okay, what I've been saying is like, okay, would you or would you not allow me to be drug out of my home, to be lynched, if it would keep you comfortable? That's what we need to know. And I don't know. I mean, it's just all these things. It's like, well, I need to be comfortable. And the way I do that is for you to be uncomfortable. So...
Yes. It's like Wayne said, there's no good ones unless you're willing to get up from the table with Nazis.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. 100%.
Card-carrying racists. My point is, for this system of incentives and rewards to operate, they don't have to be. Any of them may, but none of them
Great
must.
points, man.
Racism exists, and it's efficient. Yeah. And in a capitalist society where cops are competing for promotions, private prisons are competing for contracts, and politicians are competing for votes, if an unethical behavior sees a higher return than the alternative, then ethics are a luxury. There are hundreds of examples of businesses that claim, in periods of prosperity, that they prefer to do what is right over what is profitable. But what do they say when prosperity ends? Every boom has a bust. Since 1900, the US has spent 1 out of every 4 years in recession. And in the lean season, not using this generations-old system built by white people to advantage their descendants is a liability. A values-based business typically goes one of 3 ways: compromising their values to stay competitive, getting bought by someone who compromised their values to stay competitive, or sticking to their guns and facing a higher risk of going out of business. Many choose to do the right thing, and some even survive. But that's beating the odds. The market trends towards the optimal strategy. No one ever went broke appealing to the ignorance of white people. The collaborator treating non-white suffering as the cost of doing business also works rhetorically. The average conservative citizen doesn't know anything about the Syrian civil war, but they know the refugee crisis is something the left seems to care about. So demonizing refugees is mutually beneficial for pundits and politicians who want to rally their base by spiting liberals, and for white supremacists who want to mainstream racism against Arabs. The average conservative citizen doesn't understand epidemiology. But they don't want to blame their own party for letting 1 million die of COVID, so calling it the Chinese virus is mutually beneficial for pundits and politicians who want to deflect blame onto a foreign nation, and for white supremacists who want to mainstream racism against Asians. And yet, despite this blatancy in collaborating with white supremacists and having eerily similar goals to white supremacists, the collaborator insists that they are themselves non-racist. Their decades of opposing affirmative action, right to assembly, police reform, fair voting efforts, redistricting, funding for public schools, prisoners' rights, religious tolerance, shutting down Guantanamo, accessibility for non-English speakers, immigration, investment in low-income neighborhoods, decolonizing school curricula, Indigenous Peoples Day, putting Harriet Tubman on the 20, kneeling, ending the drug war, or withdrawing from the Middle East, are framed as problems of implementation. We agree with the aim of closing the racial wealth gap, just not like this. We agree with the aim of Latin Americans entering the country, just not like this. We agree with the aim of peaceful protest, just not like this. And if we on the left are to ask, how exactly are we supposed to get this without this? Oh, coming up with that solution? That's our job. And if it's not getting done, it's because we haven't come up with a solution they like yet. And
really
probably what they don't like about our solutions is that we implied the problem.
Say that again?
So we're letting this run a little long. I just don't want to
Oh, it'll be. I think we've played this. So it should be okay.
Okay. Oh, Niddy, your chat also wants to know if you're awake.
Oh, I'm awake.
Yeah.
I'm just
Niddy, I really appreciate you, man.
Yeah.
All right, let's let it roll for a little bit because we're letting it roll and we talk
racism.
A lot. So
yes. White people are overrepresented in dozens of industries nationwide, but have you considered that it's a fluke? Pitch me a solution for it being a fluke. The collaborators' white supremacy exists in the negative space. They agree racism exists. They agree we should oppose it. But they disagree that any individual thing you're talking about is an example of it. Getting a Republican to identify an actual incident of systemic racism is like trying to point at your shadow with a flashlight. And it's reasonable to ask, Jesus, how far can these guys push the envelope before the rest of the establishment calls them what they are?
Yes.
But if you're waiting for the moment, a white moderate...
That has
been the question on the tip of our tongues.
Yes.
For the past month.
Yes. So Uncle Bobby says everybody knows a rape victim, but nobody knows a rapist. Everybody knows there's racism, but nobody can point to a racist.
Stop putting me on the big screen.
I thought you didn't like it, but people are going to complain if I don't. Okay, well, I needed you to say it. That way people don't think I'm the problem, because they'll be like, one of y'all is beautiful, and it's the only person that was not put on the big screen.
All right, look, you have not been on the big screen at all. You put me on the big screen, Niddy on the big screen.
Look, Jake gets big screened all day.
Yeah, I'm trying to,
right,
to be
I will
modest.
say it though. There are too many Nazis in the goddamn community, and I'm tired of me and Jay being the only ones calling the motherfuckers out.
Yes.
You happy?
Yes, there it is. There it is.
Agrees mainstream conservatism has done something unacceptably and unequivocally racist? You're underestimating how long white people can equivocate. There's a lot to say about the white moderate, and I'm about to be that lefty who expends
Also, real quick, you guys can talk to these people, but you need to be like Sean. Shame should be the name of the game. Right?
Yeah.
If you want to invite him on your channel for good old fashioned Nazi fleecing, have right on at it.
Right. No, he's good. He's good. And I did wanna, because people think that I mean Nazi in the Twitter sense, where it's just like Republicans I don't like, and I don't mean bigots. Like if there's like a conservative in the community or a troll like those aren't Nazis. I'm not to the point where I think Serb is a Nazi. Nazis are people that think Hitler is right. Nazis are people who don't understand why we're not doing that here. This is what I mean by Nazi. And they are here. And we need to not have our head stuck in the sand when they start to do their dog whistles, because there are dog whistles that I don't see that you guys do, and you're too comfortable to not call out. You don't want to make waves, and you don't have to. Just DM me. I will make the waves for you, but like, don't just like sit on the shit and let them fester and like gain friends, and then make it harder for the rest of us when they finally get like the balls to, you know, go a little bit harder. Because the thing about Nazis is they're not complacent. They're opportunistic.
100%.
And they want to kill your friends. So, you know, like hope those of us, you know, who, you know, may not see it or, you know, whatever. I mean, if you don't feel comfortable calling it out, like get it into the hands of somebody who will.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I didn't want to jack I didn't want to take over the feed or anything. I just wanted to mention one thing.
Yeah.
There is never a good reason to be polite to a Nazi. Unless that Nazi's like a cop or something and you're pulled over. Maybe. But like, that's it. You don't owe these people anything. They have the same ideology as sexual predators. They know that what they believe is fucked up, so they don't tell you everything outright. They try to sneak into the group, infiltrate the group, and then when you're on your own or surrounded by quote-unquote like-minded individuals, they will start to say more and more fucked up shit, and they will continue to press the issue and see how far you're willing to go. How deep is your hatred? You know what I mean? It's like a sexual predator. Like how much touching can I get away with here? It's the same shit.
Yes.
And there is no reason for you to ever be nice to a motherfucker that wants the subjugation of everyone who doesn't look like him. We fought a fucking war over this. All right?
Absolutely.
I know. And that's it. That's all I got to say.
Steph said, for what it's worth, I'm at the point of calling Serb at least a Nazi sympathizer. He'd like to see me dead. Steph,
I didn't say Serb was not a Nazi sympathizer.
He might be.
I did not say that.
No, but that's it too. Like, there's a thing, and that's where, and I wanna identify the difference between groupthink and what I would call a community voice. You know, we all have different levels of exposure with somebody. So, for instance, I didn't know the Tangelo situation full out till Steph broke it down for me. But once Steph broke it down for me, I didn't have to be there or see the tape or go back through the play-by-play until somebody proves to me otherwise. That's what the fuck happened. You understand? So you have to understand with marginalized people, there's very few of us and we can't be everywhere at once. So listening to each other is a fucking survival mechanism. That's why when we identify people who are not really down for the cause, we have all types of mistreatment for them because we have to let it be known that they're not to be given the same benefit of the doubt that the rest of us sort of need to rely on. But Steph, we appreciate you. Let me roll some more tapes here. We'll see if we get through this thing.
Many words complaining about liberals as he does fascists, but look, as much as this series is about the tactics of the far right, it is at least as much about how the center-left is susceptible to them and complicit. So, okay, when a Democrat loses an election, what happens with the white liberal pundit class? Well, there's suddenly a lot of chatter about how to talk to your racist uncle over Thanksgiving, about how liberals in red states can contact their representatives, about the value of debate. This is our fault, they say. We let this happen because we didn't have enough conversations with white conservatives. You hear a lot more of that talk than about how the gutting of the Voting Rights Act cost a lot of the left the right to vote, and what could be done to guarantee their representation in the next election. In fact, you hear a lot more about how that kind of talk is alienating to the white conservatives who supported gutting the Voting Rights Act. About how reaching across the aisle is going to mean easing off the race talk, at least for now. POC representation is quickly...
Did you see that conversation?
No.
Oh, you don't know what he's talking about. No, oh my God. No, it was a bunch of Black leaders trying to tell Joe Biden what they needed from him.
Yep.
And Joe Biden just being like, I'll tell you what you need. Like, I mean, the whole conversation was tantamount to if you
white explaining
Black.
Yeah. Oh,
I remember that. Yeah.
Oh, that's awful. Well, I always call him shoot him in the knee, not the head, Biden. So
framed as a critical long-term goal, but in the present moment, while we are competing for elected office, guaranteeing the minority vote is a luxury. What's prioritized is that the people who suppressed the Black vote in order to win elections not be made to feel that they are racist. Because, I mean, what if they genuinely believe the Voting Rights Act unfairly targets Southern states? Or even if, and I'm saying if here, they did do it to suppress votes. If hurting Black people isn't their goal and they're just trying to win elections, is that really racist? Moderates are very cagey about breaking out the R word for a fellow white person. See, there's this other definition of racism that most white people learn in grade school. Racism is when you say mean things to other kids about skin color and it hurts their feelings. Racism is about cruelty, and harm done by white people, therefore, is not racism if it isn't cruel, if it's merely ignorant or apathetic. But ignorance and apathy can be reasoned with. You just gotta sit down and hash it out, as long as it takes.
I just gotta say, here's the other gaslighting we deal with, is when it's not cruelty, it can't be racism. And then when it is cruelty, it's not racism, it's just personal cruelty.
No, yeah, that's one bad apple.
Yeah.
You don't know what's in their heart.
They're just willing to be insensitive to make a point.
Heart. Yeah.
Real white supremacy is about emotional distress or interpersonal violence. It's uncommon, it's unpopular, and it's a hearts and minds issue.
Boom.
What this definition leaves out is any notion that white supremacy is about power. That white people who disavow racism still live longer, get paid better, get arrested less often, and are typically in position to negotiate with whomever's in power. That this society was built for...
Real quick. When I try to explain to people about like the structural power of racism, like the difference between bigotry and racism is that if you hate somebody and the system is set up to also hate that person or to empower your hatred against them, that's racism. That's why Black people can't be racist. And I will give you a perfect example of it. If one Black person and a white person are having some sort of altercation, right? And the white person stabs the Black guy, right? If the cops show up and see this, how are they going to react? They're going to immediately assume that Black person did something. And they're not going to put the white guy in handcuffs. They're going to talk this out. We're going to figure this out. And that's just how it goes. And that's how, in general. Now, flip it. If a Black person were to do that, even to save their own life, you know what I mean? Even if the cops saw it, what's happening? We're going to be in handcuffs until we get this figured out. Because your life doesn't matter as much, and it's just what it is, man. Like, I can't make a phone call and fuck up someone else's life with the cops or whatever.
Right.
You get what I'm saying?
Yes.
I can't.
Yes.
I can't do that. I don't have that power. I can't be racist.
Yeah, and here's the thing I want potential allies to hear. I know you believe in your heart and mind that all people are equal. And that means we all have the same inherent self-worth. But what Wayne is trying to tell you is that self-worth for y'all is priceless. And for us, it's not a lot of money. And we know that because the history of our ancestors being bought and sold, right? And there were so many white moderates who then, like I said, they were walking down Main Street, right? And it was hardware store, Negro store on the way to the goddamn saloon. And it was, you look to the right, oh, it's fucking shameful what we're doing in this country to those Negroes. Man, I really hope the piano players got his shit together tonight because it's going to be a wild one. You know what I'm saying? And so when Wayne talks about our lives are worth less, you just have to understand that that's what it is. It's not about hearts and minds. It's about us knowing that painful fact of reality. Right? And Wayne, we call that situation you described of racism a victory for the justice system. Because more times than not, the black guy just gets shot.
Facts.
For the everyman. And being the everyman confers power upon you. When children of white moderates get older and first brush up against this definition, wherein white supremacy is not small, but all-encompassing, where it can be cruel, but is at least as often indifferent, and where every white person in the country is bound up in it and privileged by it, whether they want to be or not, and will never, ever experience it themselves, where it's not about feelings, but about power. How often do they say, oh, maybe the definition I grew up with was simplified for 9-year-olds? Or, oh, maybe the definition given to me by white grown-ups was less complete than one a black grown-up might have given?
Well,
and how often do
here?
they say...
Sure.
Sorry, I know you...
No.
We're going to be here for a while. I really, really, really want to point out how much those last two statements could also be... like how the trans community is dealing with those two statements too, where it's just like, no, my teacher told me that, you know, XY is boy and XX is girl and boys need to wear pants and girls need to wear skirts.
Yeah.
Or my mommy and daddy, or my God told me that.
I'm gonna try to, again, lower the temperature of being wrong. You know, I was somebody who spent a lot of time studying sex differences in people. So I was sensitive to the narrative about certain groups having competitive advantages over others. Now, I would have died on any hill with the rainbow flag defending LGBTQ rights to the death of me, but I was wrong about that, right? And it took Stephanie and others literally just laying out for me and missing the fact that, holy shit, sports is integral to life. I grew up playing sports, coaching sports, reffing sports. How the fuck can Americans be having this mindset, I'm not anti-trans, but I think so-and-so shouldn't be able to participate in sport? What? Like, now to hear it, it's just like I can't believe I used to be a Christian. I can't believe I would even let myself be open to that type of thinking, when clearly it should be everybody participates until at such time we can demonstrate that there's a fucking problem, which we haven't done. But it's just another example of these are real issues, and the simplified child version of I think everyone's equal, I think we all should get along, does not mean that you're not harboring ideas where the well's been poisoned by the meta, right, that we're all taking in. And this is why recently I've been thinking, all right, because yesterday we read that story about how, you know, the majority of Americans support the GOP's anti-trans policies, which I think is a way misleading way to frame it. But one of the things it spoke to was how much knowing someone makes a difference in your perspective. And it really just made me think about how there might be an extra responsibility for those of us that have, in this example, trans friends, and I'm fortunate enough to have a bunch of them. We might have to do some extra work because of how many people don't have that privilege. Steph is here, and I want to see what Steph has to say. Go ahead, Steph.
Hey, Steph.
Yo. And
she's
out of
there. Steph's gone. Maybe going to grab something. Oh wait, I think she's back.
Yeah,
I was just gonna step away for a minute, but yeah, I have thoughts. But I'm listening.
You're okay. Okay. You're good. All right. Appreciate you.
You hit on something just now.
Okay, real quick, Jay, Beck says you have a new trans friend now in her. Or him. God damn it.
Oh, I appreciate that.
And I always do this to Beck, because when
y'all have
I
history.
met Beck, he was a hot lesbian. And I just got that stuck in my head and it won't go away, god damn it. A horrible person, don't be like me. Beck is an awesome white guy.
I'm happy to hear that. I appreciate that, Beck.
Yeah.
And hope to be able to chat soon. Go ahead, Wayne.
For sure. Something that you hit on. It's about the conservative mindset, the conservative narrative. Like, things have to happen to them for them to have a change of character, right? That's just what happens with the hyper-religious people. They are primed to believe in things in parables and stories, and the change of character only happens through struggle. They can't just read statistics and change their mindset. They can't do it unless it's like a negative statistic that reinforces their hatred. They have to have the full hero's journey every time. They can't just give you your humanity. They have to lose something along the way and then gain respect for you and all sorts of bullshit, because that's how every one of their stories are.
Yeah, it's why shame is the name of the game, because I think it actually it works for both sides. Ironically, for marginalized groups, for us, what it does is it you jump in there for us. We can sit peacefully on the sidelines. You get practice taking this issue on yourself. You call out from within. You say, hey, I have that same privileged identity you have, and that's not gonna fucking fly here at all. And literally, you can start with these words. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. You don't have to get creative with it, right? What it then does for them is maybe not right away, because they usually get combative, but down the road, that does allow them to have the hero's arc. Because trust me, part of my maturity is I fucked shit up and had to deal with the consequences of it, right? So anytime somebody's like, oh, you're a great dude, I was like, yeah, it's only because I wasn't, and boy, let me tell you, that didn't work out, right? And so some people need that, right? Because then they'll look back and be like, yo, these people called me out, and yeah, that shit wasn't fun, but that's what helped me realize where I was going astray, right? And now they can help other people. It's the same way, like I think what Niddy's doing with Dwell is so awesome, right? Because you're right there, like you just left the group. So you only in just like a little bit of a change of ideas are not part of the group, right? And that's the same effect we're trying to get people to have, right? As, oh, I had that bad idea like a few minutes ago. Let me help you out with that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty good. Redemption story. If that's what makes less people racist, sure. Let's do our part and do that.
I just made it's if you don't, it's a nudge to help, because if not, then if there's no social consequences to your point, it's not just gonna be like cool facts. I'm going to change my character now.
Right.
Not when power's at stake.
Oh, and just something else real quick.
Sure,
we can
sure.
get back to it. White people, I need y'all to embrace roasting culture. Like y'all already do, but only the really rich people do it. The roast, they talk shit to each other in a room and all get together and have fun and drink and shit. But like middle class and poor, well, no, poor white people do that, but middle class white people really don't do that. They got the white glove shit, you know, the underhanded comments and whatnot. Like I live in Minnesota. Minnesota nice is a thing, and Minnesota nice is just passive aggressiveness. And like y'all really got to dig your heels in and start talking shit to these people in your circles that have garbage ideologies. Because guess what? Every brown group of people, every group of people that is not white in the world, they roast each other. They talk up to power, even though it doesn't seem like that. Maybe like certain parts of the Middle East, they don't do that because they're still on that king shit. But pretty much everywhere else, you can, if someone's fucking up above you socially, it's not the end of the world for you to call that out and to drag them through the mud. Because guess what? People of color have been dragged through the mud socially in nearly every other circumstance. So that's why black people use the N-word to each other. You know what I'm saying? So toughen up. You know what I mean? If you see a Nazi, talk shit. What's the worst that's gonna happen? You're gonna lose a friend.
Jay and I were just talking about that earlier. It's just like, you know, black streamer comes up in here, catches us slipping. It's like, oh fuck. Now we gotta go, you know, now we gotta hear about that. And I mean, it's not like, man, fucking black people. We understand that's the culture. And it's like, all right, I fucked up. Let me go over here and, you know, take my hits and walk away a better person. That is black culture though.
100%. And we gotta settle shit right then and there. That's a class thing as well. Like we ain't got time for white gloves and later. We can't throw a party later on where we're all in whiteface making fun of all those people that make our lives hard. We gotta deal with this shit right now. So
also that's again a culture thing. Be aware of your culture, because to me, it was one of the reasons I wanted to make this channel, because I wanted to stay in this community, but y'all, the channels are so dry. The presentation of everything is like a fucking video essay from school. Like I just wanted to make a channel where we could just be a little bit more fucking wild. Like just say fuck it a lot more and curse and invent and, you know, I just, you know, I think that goes with it, Wayne. But like loose, like let it loose, man. And the other thing too is the other side does. They have that clubhouse mentality. If you watch their streams, you know, they're letting it go. So at some point, you have to meet the energy that, you know, is gonna come your way.
Hey, shit,
Niddy's gotta go.
He's been chasing toddlers all day.
Niddy, thanks so much for hanging out, man.
Today it was rough, but I had a request for my chat to give my like primary takeaways from the stream. So
Please do. Go for it.
Please.
Let me monologue a bit, I guess.
No, I guess Niddy gets a big screen.
The main crack of the bat for me in this video in particular is I started watching this series of alt-right playbook content just before the 2016 election. And is that when it got released or soon afterwards? Somewhere around
probably. I think so. Mm-hmm.
And I remember just just thinking this way made me really, it made me uncomfortable, but also got me to step a little bit further away from the more conservative ideologies or the positions that were like, I have to hold this, strong belief in these things. And it got me to distrust media outlets that were, supporting candidates and policies that were going to hurt my friends, my Christian friends, right? My African American Christian friends were going to get hurt and disenfranchised by these networks and people that typically align with my belief system, but they support candidates that want to hurt my Christian friends. What the fuck? I can't be on board with this. And so I got off that boat, at least there, right?
Yeah.
And then it gave me enough latitude then to be like, well, if I don't have to be in lockstep with even the people that I teach the Bible to, like where else can I explore a little bit? What else can I open my mind up to? Who else should I be listening to? And I guess the YouTube algorithm helped me along the way to get to somewhere over here, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And okay, so that's the video, right? As like a takeaway from people who don't want to sit through this whole stream and get the piecemeals of it. Go watch the original, please. Go like, subscribe to all the jack over there. But from our discussion about, how to handle people of toxic ideologies, right? And oppressive ways of communication and thinking and beliefs. I guess and we've said this before or something like it before, but I really love that my channel, your channel, Jay, your channel, the Flavor, we're all about being accountable streamers, right? We're not just letting people we don't know come and spew their shit and make a mess of our channel. Like, we try to do some homework, and if we don't know them, we give them enough rope to hang themselves, and then they're out of here. That's good. And I'm glad that we do response videos, that we call this shit out. I'm glad that we are taking the time to talk about and talk about issues that are affecting the real people on the ground, that we make sure that everyone's represented. I really appreciate you guys, making sure to include me on this stream, because I am in the middle class. I could be seen as the liberal who, is white knighting or something, or, that this doesn't really affect me, or I'm unempathetic about it. I just want to let people know that I really do care. I'm in the middle of the city, and I'm trying to raise kids that are going to be conscious of this stuff. They're going to be I want them to be at least conscious of the fact that they're probably going to get, for a while, treated unfairly in their favor in different situations. And I want them to find ways and opportunities to lift other people up, and hopefully not see people for black and white ideas about them, right? To pull them away from having strong, bigoted, or blanketed opinions of particular types of people. And hopefully I'll get better at calling them out when they start getting those ideas, right?
Sure.
Oh, this group of Mexicans joined my school. Excuse me?
Right.
Just stop right there. Just stop at the cultural identification of people. Like, why do you call them that? What, SE them on shit like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, those are my takeaways.
Yeah, Niddy, I really wanted you to come here because you represent, I think, your unique representation that we really don't have when you're not here, and
Right.
I think your voice is valuable, and because you're a former fundy, correct?
I was a fundy that didn't like to be called a fundy.
Oh, who does?
It's a very
Facts.
special kind of fundy. We have our own fundy section.
Well, yeah, and I mean, so you have two very unique perspectives, and that we definitely value, and so I love your contribution to every discussion. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna let you get some sleep because I know they chasing. Was it 2 and 4 or 4 and 6?
Yeah, they're 4 and 6, and I don't want to air their dirty laundry on this.
No.
You've
been a single dad today.
It's a numbers game. 4 and 6 is enough. we got the picture.
And then I got them
how
for
you
like half
are
the day
awake.
tomorrow until the wife comes back. So yeah.
All right. So
she's having a weekend to her land.
All right, Niddy, appreciate it. I'll turn your channel off too, just so you're good to go. All right, man.
Yeah, good night, guys.
Have a good night, man. Thanks so much. We'll see you later.
That's Niddy.
That's Niddy, bitches. All right. Let me do that. I think we should be good to go. So come over to hang out with me and Maya. All right, cool. We should be good. All right, so let's go ahead and we're gonna get through this.
You can't just redefine racism. Right out the gate, the white moderate is possessive not just of their whiteness, but of the very definition of racism. In the definition they know, racism exists only over here. And the white collaborator is a compatriot who shares their ultimate vision for the future and is simply gone off course somewhere. And they don't see themselves as flawed individuals with a long way still to go. They've already arrived. They're the destination everyone else needs to get to. Living proof that white supremacy can be easily and painlessly opted out of. They can't see collaborators as opponents because there is no definition of white supremacy that includes collaborators and doesn't also include them. And this is critically important. They don't want to start thinking of themselves as white. They don't want the constant awareness of one's race and how one's race is perceived. The things the rest of humanity deals with. And who would want that? I'll tell you who wants that. Nazis and Klansmen want that. They're the only ones who like thinking about whiteness every day. Something? So white moderates cling to the other definition, the comfortable one.
I'm sorry, I saw her hand raised for a hot second. Maybe
I saw the cheer thing go off. But
never mind.
Okay.
They may be more or less willing to collaborate with people of color, but mostly in ways that don't foreground their whiteness. White as default is one concession that can never be made. In part because it's the one that can't be spoken. Their ideal is a kind of big tent anti-racism where victory comes by winning over reactionary conservatives. That might strike you as odd given that reactionary conservatives have seen many victories over the last 20 years, and it's not like they did it by winning over us. White supremacists bolster their numbers by finding little disgruntled pockets of America that have not heretofore engaged much in politics, and radicalizing them to the cause, and then pitching themselves to white collaborators as a demographic now large enough to sway a narrow election. If moderates wanted to counter this strategy, they might look at who out there is sympathetic to progressive causes but isn't voting. Maybe because they don't feel liberal candidates represent them. Or maybe because someone just happened to shut down all the polling locations in their neighborhood. And mathematically, there's probably a lot more disenfranchised people of color who match that description than racist white people who aren't already Republicans. But that strategy would mean doubling down on anti-racist talking points instead of easing off of them. It would mean a willingness to alienate some white people. It's giving up on them. It's admitting that a significant percentage of American whiteness is not on the side of racial equity. It means there's a definition of racism where it isn't fringe, but common and pervasive, and where addressing it requires thinking about their place in it. It means asking why they feel more affinity for white people who oppose them than people of color they claim to agree with. Why the votes of the former have to be earned, but the latter are expected. And since all that seems intolerable, they fixate on the kinds of gestures that feel like moving in the right direction, but run very little risk of arriving anywhere. How about instead of defunding the police, we give them more money than any administration in years, but also Juneteenth is a national holiday now. Something for everyone.
That's equal.
The left has the numbers to leave behind white centrists who slow down anti-racist efforts. And it doesn't, because white moderates don't want to.
Wait,
they and the white collaborators are...
Go ahead.
Steph, I know you wanted to say something. You haven't talked
Oh,
about
shit.
first.
Yeah, get it, Steph.
Just want to quote one of my favorite lines from Martin King's letter from a Birmingham jail.
Well, I'm glad we didn't bring it up because you should do it. This is your thing. Let's get it.
Shallow understanding from people of goodwill is more frustrating than absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will.
Stephanie, you put that. You have been trying to. Man, I feel like you're an example of like legacy, right? You're trying to literally keep in people's minds what this man was trying to say. And
he was a revolutionary. People don't understand that. People only remember that, content of character stuff. And it's like, well, yeah, that's absolutely part of it. But part of the content of your character has to be an examination of your privilege. And part of an examination of how that privilege hurts people, including you. I mean, there's a real break between, oh, isn't that too bad?
Yeah.
Randy Newman's saying, well, President said, little fat man, ain't that a shame what the river has done to this poor cracker's land? It's like, oh, gee, tisk. Well, fucking do something about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can't stand around and watch a homeless black man get choked on the subway train in New York City and think that, well, that's okay.
Right.
It's bullshit. You can, and you do.
Right.
And there are no consequences. So what the hell? What you just?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that entire or the meat of that speech is really all about frustration with the white moderates, to the point of saying that he believed that was the principal obstacle to justice. Mm-hmm. And I just think that whole message gets missed, that he's not saying, oh, hey, you guys, might want to consider thinking about this a little bit differently. He's going, you are the fucking problem, right?
It's real hard to sell trucks in January with an anti-capitalist in mind. You gotta whitewash them. You gotta give them that "I have a dream" speech to make sure that they get that 15% off on his not birthday. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't want to take away anything that anyone said here. I mean, that it is a problem that people are allowing themselves to be, sold this bullshit whitewash, version of societal norms. But again, I don't want to detract from the amount of money that is being pushed. Like, this is propaganda. And I really, really, really want to do something like on propaganda, because I don't think that people realize that a lot of the like why they think the things they think, the way they believe the world works, is a lot just because we are propaganda. Like, we are told how we should think about the world, why we should work, how we should think about inmates, what should be legal, what to think about each other, and that the rich should be worshipped. And when we're talking about people, like people think they're just displaced millionaires or billionaires or whatever, like that's because we've been fed a lot of propaganda to believe that they are the gold standard and we should seek to be one of them instead of seeing them as the enemy that they are. That's like what putting all these wedge issues and trying to pull us apart, because when they didn't do that, we banded together and damn near overthrew them.
We
And
all agree on taxes down here. You know what I mean? That's all I want to say.
Yep.
And it
Appreciate
just
y'all.
I don't, he's really not, I don't think he ever really said, I mean, he kind of hints that it's propaganda. Like, if you know anything about
Yes.
propaganda, you understand that's what he's getting at. But
Good
I think it
point.
needs to be stated outright, because most
Yes.
people don't understand how did they get there.
And that's a whole maybe that's a whole nother stream too, but
Yeah.
an issue, because a lot of this was about you're not seeing what's going on. And you touched on two things, the propaganda and then the money. And if you can't identify all of the operations of the propaganda, especially because it's not somebody shoving a pamphlet down your jacket pocket, right? It's this deep money game of lobbyists doing their thing. Then there's just the ad campaign is just to kind of normalize the conversation a little bit, right? Then we're pushing for the, what they're really pushing for in terms of further marginalizing people legally, right? Making it so marginalization is the law. That's the problem, right? It's going to the magician's show and not understanding that what you're watching is sleight of hand.
Exactly.
Jay, I have to tell you a story, because like I know I mention it all the time when we talk about PR. I went to school for PR.
It's good to let them know.
Yeah, I went to school for it, and I was helping out in politics, and I left it within 2 years, because, like you're talking about, people don't understand how absolute the machine is. You know what I mean? And like all of that stuff that you're talking about, that's down there at the core of, like, trying to keep the money, trying to keep the power. They don't even see the surface stuff. Like, I'm not even gonna say who in my family I had this conversation with, because it embarrasses me to this day. But I'm just gonna say I had a conversation with a couple of my family members who they said that they watched an Illuminati special on Fox News, not Fox News, on like the Fox channel.
Sure.
And they were like telling me, they were so into it, and they was telling me all this and that and all that, right?
I've had to go there.
And it was like, it's all a secret conspiracy and stuff. So I'm like, okay, so
It's a secret conspiracy that they aired on a national network.
exactly.
All right.
So they aired it. They aired the conspiracy on primetime TV, and they had an editor. Like, people don't understand that everything that's put in front of you has an editor. The price of milk and bread has an editor. Like, these are decisions that are consciously made by people who are employed in order to keep funds going. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And not to and to just, tie it back to even what Maya was saying about Anna. This is why, if you have a platform and a voice where you're doing important work, like making people aware of economic injustice that they need to be fighting against, but then you're playing fast and loose, fucking up with social issues, is such a problem, because you're doing important work, but now you're throwing the fucking team under the bus in the process. We can't do that, y'all. So I just believe it. It's like, embrace it to me. Like, if you want to be out here, you're out here. It comes with a little bit of responsibility, but you're welcome to stay in the game. Just, embrace the responsibility a little bit. All right, we're on a mission, team.
Are supposed to be in this together. And they are. Just not in the way they think. The irony is that the right feels no affinity for white moderates whatsoever.
None.
They hate, and I mean hate white moderates. Smug pricks always talking about unity whenever they win an election. Reach across the aisle. That's what you say when you've lost and you want the other guys to make concessions they don't have to make. You don't do it when you're in power. Are they trying to humiliate us, or did we really lose to a bunch of clowns who don't even know how to win right? Debasing themselves in front of minorities just to get their votes when they clearly aren't going to do anything real for them. Christ, at least the white supremacists are honest.
That is the problem.
The right will threaten POC sometimes just to call the white moderates bluff. Oof. Racism must be understood as more than a set of individual beliefs and feelings, but as a tool for achieving political ends. First and foremost, because claiming otherwise is both factually and morally wrong, but also, without this understanding, white culture can't recognize the stakes. Fascism exists in a state of permanent conflict. Things like declaring an indefinite state of martial law, suspending elections, or executing members of government are justified on the grounds that the people are in danger and need to be protected and mobilized. Now, this isn't unique to fascism. Between the Cold War, the war on drugs, and the war on terror, the US has been in some form of ongoing conflict for the last 3 generations. But you'll note the Cold War didn't end on a battlefield. It ended when the Soviet Union collapsed in on itself. Communism, terrorism, and drug dealing are patterns of behavior, and they wax and wane, often for reasons outside our control. Geopolitics may someday shift such that terrorism becomes less prevalent, or that lowers the demand for drugs. Communism can be fought with diplomacy and economic sanctions, because communists can choose not to be communist anymore. And fascists have no use for soft power. To justify a military dictatorship, they need an opponent that won't just go away on its own one day. It always comes back to identity politics. Because black people can't stop being black. Theirs is a number that will not be reduced without the hard power of violence and displacement. Fascism begins by
because I really want to push back on, like, there's been a lot of shit about identity politics, and I just want to remind everybody that all politics are identity politics. People vote for what's in their best interest. And I don't understand, what else you would expect the average citizen to do. The whole point of going out and talking to people is hey, what is it that you need from me? And they tell you, and you vote with the person that can identify with you, or that is, understands who you are and what you need. And so I've seen a lot of people talking about, well, and of course it's the right, so they're using it badly. But it's also the other thing I wanted to mention is just how fucked up this 2-party system is, to where we have to do this. Other countries don't have to do this. You can kind of, we really, I don't know. And then there's a lot of even Democrats saying, oh, we need a functional 2-party system. It's no, we don't. We need more. We really need more. And I would be really eager for the right to split off into Trumpers and the right-leaning Republicans, if we could get the conservative Dems and then the progressives to split off, so that we could have 4 parties. And it would make them campaign differently. It would make them function in Congress differently.
Damn, that I like that. That's an improvement right there.
Yeah.
Wayne, we up in this bitch like college football tournaments. We'll start with 4. We'll start with 4.
We'll start there. We'll start there. Because then, like, once you get the splinter, then you've made it okay to splinter. We're gonna get
right.
more.
Also, it lowers the size you need to get a viable 5th or 6th, right? Because now it's not having to get half the whatever, you know, or one of 2 immobile parties, right? Yeah, I love it. I really do.
It forces people to actually get up and give reasons as to why they need to keep their seat versus just saying, oh, you don't want that other guy over there to get this seat, because like you don't have to campaign on that, you know what I mean? Like you don't have to try, you just have to sit there and try and hold your power. And I mean, I live in the Twin Cities. We have ranked choice voting, you know, and for
Love it.
I think 2 elections right now, it's pretty cool. Stephanie lives up in Maine. They got ranked choice voting. It's pretty cool. And you actually have to appeal to voters. You can't just sit there and throw like, you know, giant dinner parties for like this one group of rich people or this other one group of rich people. And all their kids go to the same schools, but these rich people over here, they you know, they like to tip the maids. You know what I mean?
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You actually have to have political ideologies that appeal to everyone, not just major donors. I love it.
100%. I'm with it, guys.
Stealing targets from the left.
Oh, also the identity politics thing, Mike. That was just a fantastic point. And it's just an example of rhetorical contamination. And that's the one thing where it feels like a word game. You have to let them say what they're going to say, because all they're doing, you know, it just becomes, like you said, another, I'm not an ally, I'm not woke. You know, you're taking the bait, basically.
They focus on elites, corrupt businessmen, weak-willed politicians, subtly shifting focus away from leftist critique of systems to types of people. But sooner or later, they settle on something unchangeable: race, gender, ethnicity, religious background. The bigotry is localized to the region's existing prejudices. In Nazi Germany, it was Jews, Jehovah's Witnesses, Roma, Slavs, black people, queer people, and people with disabilities. In fascist Italy, it was Slovenes, until Mussolini invaded Libya and Ethiopia, and so demonized their citizens as well. In the US, the Klan and the American Nazi Party targeted African Americans, Jews, Catholics, queer people, and immigrants. Spain under Franco tried to determine the exact racial makeup of the Spanish people so they could cast out those with the wrong mixture of bloods. This is why the far right has gone all in on transphobia, by the way. Like, it's joined Islamophobia on the outer rim of acceptable bigotries. On some level,
really
they
doing the
know
eyebrow raise.
trans folks aren't just cis people in disguise, that desistance is rare and conversion therapy doesn't work. Because if trans people could just stop being trans, they never would have picked them for an enemy. This is where it starts. This is why you should have no patience for anyone saying wokeness is dividing the left. We should be focusing on class. They're not attacking us on class. They're trying to sell themselves as better on class than we are. Where do you think that fairy tale about blue-collar whites comes from? They want you to believe that they, and not the socialists, are the path forward for the downtrodden. There's a reason fascism started popping up all over Europe right after the Russian Revolution. Mussolini got his start beating up socialists in the Po Valley on the grounds that he was defending not wealthy elites, but struggling rural farmers who didn't like the socialist takeover of their industry during the Biennio Rosso. The fascist goal is to harness and redirect class resentment towards a scapegoat. They come at us on identity. It always comes down to the shape of the human skull. When a provocateur shows up on a college campus to talk about ideas, it's not a debate. There's no special sequence of words that will defeat them.
Did the audio go out?
No, wait. You couldn't hear it? Can you hear
Maybe
us?
refresh Wayne. Wayne, can you hear us?
I can hear anything.
Yeah, me either. You might have to reset.
Yeah.
This is a show of dominance. They are presenting themselves as white compatriots to be reasoned with, rather than agents of white supremacy to be opposed. In that framing, the stakes are attention, the weapons are words, and people of color are not players but tokens on a white person's game board. And they are checking whether you will submit to that structure. They don't care about ideas. They care about power. And power is what beats them. They tell you 400 people showing up to protest is just free news coverage. But when 4,000 show up, they cancel. That's power. And in absolute numbers, most events, they can't rustle up 4,000 supporters. But we can, provided cishet non-disabled white dude lefties like myself haven't told all the right's biggest targets that their struggles don't matter. And it's worth mentioning, cops fuck with protesters less when some of them are white. It's also worth mentioning racism affects 58% of the working poor, so there can be no class solidarity that doesn't address it. This isn't who needs to
Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Wayne, can you hear us?
Yeah,
I
go
can
ahead,
hear you.
Wayne.
Okay.
Super quick. I ain't never seen this shit before in my life until it was actually pointed out during the George Floyd protests.
What do you mean?
I live right around the block. I live 10 blocks away from where he died. You know what I'm
Oh,
saying?
damn.
I live right here. Everything was going on.
Yeah.
And I ain't never seen this shit before in my life. During one of the protests, they literally had 2 rows of white people on the outside of all the protesters as they were marching. And whenever the cops would try and come up and crack some heads, someone would literally shout "white shield," and then white people would stand in front and the cops wouldn't beat them up.
What?
I've never seen
Wait, they didn't get the hose or the dogs?
No.
Fuck.
I swear
That
to
happened
God.
a lot in the civil rights struggle in the South. A lot.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
But with white people, right? Not when they were all black.
No, and during the civil
Yeah.
rights struggle, that the 4 civil rights workers who were killed in Philadelphia, Mississippi, 2 of them were white. I mean, that's what turned it around in the eyes of the public. Bunch of northern white parents are seeing their kids get beat up by the cops in Birmingham.
Right.
I mean, when it's that really had a huge impact.
Yeah, no. Even when slavery, when they were trying to get slavery abolished, they were taking, passing, mixed slaves, but they were passing, and got them dressed up, and we're sending pictures around, and we're sending them out to white people, everybody knew that they needed more slaves and that they were getting desperate, and they were like, poor white people could be next. Look at what they have working in the fields now. So yeah, white moderates always get concerned when it appears in their back door or my backyard.
It puts the lie to the notion that white moderates get a pass. I mean, no, if you don't like it, you say you don't like this racism. You say you don't like this injustice. You say you don't like this, but you don't do a goddamn thing. You stand around and watch somebody get choked to death for 15 minutes. No, that's on you.
About it. Yeah.
You have agency. You just don't want to exercise it.
100%. Let's finish this and then we'll wrap up because we're almost done. Proud of you.
This
Proud
is who
of
needs
us.
to win. And if you're white, you need to be over here. I've collected as many resources as I can find by POC on what they need and want from white allies and put them in the down there part. There's a plurality of opinions on this, so I recommend reading more than one. And it may not always be a 4,000 strong protest. Every direct action is unique and must be strategized in concert with the people most affected. But what I can tell you is when business gets done, white folks
The
need to
no
split
one
the
that's
check.
everyone.
A
Yeah, the no
movement
one that says we can't
cannot
have
be
certain things.
anti-fascist if it isn't anti-racist.
Good
All right,
shit.
we
All
did it.
right,
All
we
right.
made it. We
And
made
I don't
it.
think what people don't understand is what anti-racist is. And anti-racist is speaking the fuck up. It's not looking away. Again, it's not just like he said, he's focusing on racism because it's something that people can understand. And I don't know, for whatever reason, people just aren't connecting to the trans movement or, to the immigrant movement. They're all the same. It's all the same thing. If these were things that were easy to engage with, they wouldn't be capitalizing on it. Remember, for the longest time, it was only racism. And then when it became unacceptable to be a racist, it's like, all right, well, who else can we fuck with?
The gays.
And yeah, the gays and the women
and the women,
the
misogyny. Yeah, absolutely.
And the immigrants who literally don't have a vote. And it's just anything from, and again, the us versus them has never been about like man versus woman, black versus white, immigrant versus non. A race, someone who is in a position of non-authority or no power can't have power over you. Like, what the fuck are you voting for if they can't, like, if they can't even deal with Jesus the gardener? And I know that's insanely racist, but like, this is what they're saying. Like, Nancy Pelosi is going to be mean if I try to do something about, all these immigrants and these migrant caravans. I guess we just got to let them come on in because, Biden won't sign off. It's just, it's insane. And it's stupid because they don't know any better. They won't read. They don't understand like how things actually work. And it's not about any of the things.
Well, that's what pisses me off. It's like you won't. These people aren't educated. You know that. You won't tell them they're not welcome to contribute to these issues because they're not educated. You can't tell them they're wrong. What are you willing to do? At some point, part of what the video really spoke to that I would say is kind of my take home, or at least one of them, is there comes a point you got to give up on these people, and you have to understand it's time to move.
We don't necessarily give up on them. If they are your family, I encourage you to try to have conversations with them. There's nothing we can do on a grand scale that without governmental intervention, and the government is intervening to keep them stupid. So, like, if you're going to win over somebody who has bad ideas, it has to be a ground roots effort at this point. We're not going to be able to do anything on a mass scale because they first have to trust you before they will listen to ideas that are the opposite of their own.
And it is the destiny of a conservative to be left behind to the sands of time, and they will see your shadow over the hill as you march forward, and they will catch up with you and act like they've been there the whole time. That is how they operate. So when you say like leave them, you're not really leaving them. You're roasting them, you're telling them they're wrong, and you're moving forward because the march of progress in history, I'm sorry, you know the phrase I'm trying to say. The march
I'm
of
with you.
history bends towards progress, and
ever so slowly.
But the whole point is they're wrong. You have to confront them, and by confronting, it doesn't mean necessarily fighting all the time. Just beat up the violent ones, but everybody else, just roast them. Let them know what they think is fucking stupid, and give them more. If you care about them and their family, like Maya was saying, like, give them the time of day. But all these other people, you don't have to give everybody in the street your time of day. You still trying to
No.
live your life.
Yeah.
You know,
That's futile. Yeah.
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 Just survive, take care of yourself, and try to have engagements with people who you do care about. And sometimes, you know, they're not going to believe in you and your humanity, or it might take time. You know, I would hesitate against throwing someone away forever, but like, you know, let them catch up while you move forward.
Stephanie, did you want to say anything? I know a lot of this affects you. Oh, your mic is off.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, you've got to get better at messaging too.
Yeah.
There's the example that came to mind is, you know, the former guy wanted to build the wall. We've got drugs coming across the border. It's terrible. So we'll build the wall and keep the people out. And yeah, but what about the drugs? Well, they'll still get here anyway because you still got a market anyway. So the Biden administration comes in and says, "Fuck the wall. The wall's stupid. And let's don't worry. Let's don't put the focus on the people. Let's put the focus on the drugs." So what happens? You wind up having tons more drug seizures, right? All of a sudden, enforcement on fentanyl and stuff. It's a big thing. Fentanyl's a big thing, right? It's like, oh, there's more fentanyl seizures. So what does the right do? They say, there's more fentanyl seizures. My God, we have this fentanyl stuff. And it's like, well, yeah, you wanted us to get rid of the fentanyl problem, right? So we're doing that, right? We're taking care of that business. Yeah, but what about the people and it's the ugly people that are bringing the drugs in? It's like, no, it's the fucking drugs.
But also
and
Biden's
we're just so lousy at delivering the message.
Yeah.
It's like, well, of course, you know, yeah, but who makes the case? Yeah, of course there's more seizures because there's more enforcement on the problem.
And to your point about whatever we're doing about supposed to be wanting to be pro-immigration, Biden didn't have to build a wall to have a bigger nightmare at the border. And so something's not right there either, right? Because when I said I don't want Trump to build this fucking wall, it's because I don't want what the fuck is happening right now under the Biden administration happening. Because you might as well build an invisible wall because that's what the fuck it looks like is happening. So it's you're right. We've got to get better at messaging. Absolutely, at minimum. Thank you guys so much. I'm good. I just feel privileged to be here. This was super fun.
Yeah, I'm really glad that Wayne and Stephanie showed. You guys have been great contributors to the stream.
Yeah, this is awesome. Yeah, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. If you guys don't have anything, I know for me, I think I'll be back at it tomorrow with hopefully the Blackout and Hot program, and you know, we'll be here hanging out and gather. What's
tomorrow,
up for you, Maya?
Yeah, tomorrow we have the science debunking stream. And I'm not sure what we're debunking, but it'll be so much fun. Please come back tomorrow at 9:30.
Awesome.
Eastern. We'll be here. Steph, you in?
Will Roger be there?
He may make an appearance. Well, his feather, Roger never actually appears.
No,
but the feather always appears. Are you going to appear? You going to be there?
Sure, I'll be there.
Steph, what do you got coming
appear.
up? Oh yeah, I'm definitely gonna come through. Yeah, that's is that tomorrow? Is that next week? Do we decide?
No, it's tomorrow. Well, we do it every Sunday at 9:30. So if you can't make it tomorrow, then let me know. We'll throw you in the next week.
All right. Steph, you got anything coming up?
Nothing serious.
All right, well, definitely
I
subscribe.
have a few irons in the fire, but something I may pop up to throw something out there.
All right, well, make sure you subscribe. Keep an eye out. We'll see you guys so much next time. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Guys.
See you later.
Bye.
See you next time.
Why she wanna leave me alone? Saying all I do is wrong. No rights when they been left turns. Playing that she gotta let it burn. Saying that the hell's not a home. Sunshine cause you heard it all before. Sometimes she don't wanna be be alone. Most times she don't want me gone. She don't know I try my all. She don't know I sprung in the sun, but I'm going in the winter, so we good to the fall. Remember how I told you I get it and I win, now I don't got it, you ain't answer my call. Wonder if I've been moving too strong. Maybe I just been moving too boss. Really hate when the feeling get lost. Nowadays she just dodge my calls. In the game throwing laws like Paul. Young legend Miss John like Wall. And I wish you never met like Call. Thick game lay it down like law. Made plans but you canceled them all. I was just trying to splurge in the mall. Now I'm home stacking bread till you call.
It's time to roll. She tryna slide. We smoking Zah. Stop acting shy. Cause you a demon when I get between your thighs, girl. You like my rib, you know I need you by my side, girl. It's time to roll. She tryna ride. We smoking. Stop acting shy. Cause you a demon when I get between your thighs, girl. You like my rib, you know I need you by my side, girl.
We smoking that side. I'm trying to get high. She said that she not ready for love, stop wasting my time. I got demons in my closet, I can't hide. I did all my exes wrong, they wish I died. Damn, I tried. They won't believe me when I say this. Oh my God, what a blessing. Hello Phoenix, that's my twin. I told these hoes they won't get my heart again, not again. Cause they went missing when I needed just a friend. They went missing, yeah, they always missing. They don't want no smoke, they hit the blunt and started tripping. My daughter about to be 5, I ain't got no time to be bitching. I'm still reminiscing, we ain't had no food in the kitchen.